Beneath the dust of ancient ruins, beyond the pages of half-forgotten chronicles, lies a world we still cannot explain. A world where empires vanish without a trace, where great leaders die under shadowed circumstances, where artifacts appear to defy the very laws of nature. How could a civilization carve tunnels deep beneath the earth with no tools we recognize? Why do ancient maps show lands no human was supposed to know? And how is it that even today, some lives, some entire peoples, simply disappear into history's silent void? For all we have uncovered, the past still guards its secrets with iron patience. Whispers of lost knowledge, strange deaths, impossible creations. Each mystery a door left forever ajar, inviting us to wonder, to imagine, to question everything we think we know. So sit back, clear your mind, and let's step quietly into the forgotten corridors of time, where the greatest mysteries are not just unsolved, they're waiting. In the quiet hours before dawn, the cold plains of the Carpathian Basin lie veiled in a soft mist. The moon, pale and listless, hangs low over a land once shaken by the thunder of hooves and the clash of iron. Somewhere beneath these endless fields of grass and forgotten rivers, the body of Attila the Hun, the scourge of God, was laid to rest. Yet no monument marks the grave of the man who terrified empires. No stone bears his name. Only legend remains, whispering through the shifting mists of time. In the spring of 453 AD, Attila stood at the height of his power. His dominion stretched from the edges of the Roman Empire deep into the wild heart of Eurasia. To his enemies, he was a figure of terror, a force of nature that toppled cities and shattered armies. Yet, within the sprawling encampments of the Huns, he was revered, a leader touched by the gods, destined to rule the world. On the night of his death, Attila celebrated a new marriage. His latest bride was a young woman named Ildiko, a name that hints at Gothic origins. The great Khan feasted deep into the night, surrounded by music, wine, and the loyalty of his people. As the torches guttered low and the revelers faded into slumber, Attila retired to his bedchamber. He was found dead the next morning. According to the Roman diplomat Priscus, who chronicled Hun affairs with an outsider's wary eye, Attila had perished in his sleep. The official account was almost clinical. A nosebleed, they said, had choked him. Drunk and heavy with food and wine, Attila had failed to wake as his own blood filled his throat. A banal end for a man so feared. Too banal, some would argue. There were no signs of struggle. No visible wounds marred his body. His warriors, bound by ancient customs, mourned him in a ceremony so secretive that it, too, has vanished into mystery. His closest retainers reportedly killed themselves after burying their king, to ensure that none could reveal the location of his grave. And yet, questions linger like smoke after battle. How could a man as powerful as Attila, at the pinnacle of his strength, die so suddenly and silently? Why would such a robust warlord succumb to something so seemingly trivial? Some historians have offered natural explanations. Chronic alcoholism, they suggest, could have weakened the tissues of his body, making a fatal hemorrhage plausible. Heavy feasting might have triggered an internal rupture. Others propose that he suffered an aneurysm, or that hidden health conditions, unrecorded and unnoticed, struck him down at his moment of triumph. But in the darkness beyond recorded history, speculation thrives. Some whisper that Attila was assassinated, perhaps by his new bride, Ildiko, whose people had long suffered under Hun domination. Could she have been a pawn or a willing instrument of enemies seeking to end Attila's reign by stealth? A poisoned cup, a dagger in the dark, a silent hand pressed to his mouth. Such things leave little trace, especially in an age where forensic science did not yet exist. Others look even deeper into the shadows. Attila, after all, was no ordinary conqueror in the minds of those he ruled and ravaged. Prophecies and omens clung to his name. Some believed he carried the sword of Mars, a weapon that granted divine sanction to his campaigns. Could it be that his death was not merely the result of human conspiracy, but a stroke of the supernatural, punishment for hubris, or the inevitable price of bearing too much power? The burial of Attila compounds the enigma. His body was placed within a series of coffins, one of gold, one of silver, and one of iron, before being interred in a secret grave. Rivers were said to have been diverted to conceal his resting place, and the laborers who performed the task were slain to protect the secret. No archaeological discovery has ever confirmed the location of Attila's tomb. It remains one of history's great unsolved riddles, a king without a grave, a conqueror swallowed by the very earth he once sought to command. Today, the landscape bears no trace of that final chapter. Fields roll on in quiet emptiness. Rivers have long since carved new paths through the soil. Whatever truths the land once held have been muffled by time, hidden beneath centuries of silence. Was Attila's death truly an accident of the body, a twist of fate in a night of celebration? Or was it an act of vengeance, a final rebellion against a tyrant who had brought Europe to its knees? Might his death have been sealed by forces beyond mortal reckoning, a reminder that even the greatest fall when they least expect it? The answers, like the grave of the great Khan himself, remain hidden, somewhere beneath the ancient mists, waiting for a day that may never come. Beneath the dense emerald canopy of the Chiapas jungle in southern Mexico, ancient stones rise like forgotten memories from the earth. Here, amid the ruins of Palenque, one of the greatest cities of the Maya civilization, time seems to hesitate. Thick vines curl around weathered temples. The air is heavy with the scent of rain and moss. It was in this stillness, in the year 1994, that archaeologists made a discovery that would deepen the mysteries of the Maya, the tomb of the Red Queen. The tomb lay hidden within Temple 13, a modest structure overshadowed by the grandeur of the Temple of the Inscriptions, which holds the famous sarcophagus of the ruler Pakal the Great. For centuries, Temple 13 had remained unassuming, its secrets concealed beneath layers of stone and soil. But when researchers finally ventured inside, they found a stairway descending into darkness, and at the end of it, a crypt untouched for over 1,000 years. The sarcophagus at the heart of the chamber was unlike anything the team had expected. Inside it lay the skeletal remains of a woman, her bones and the surrounding walls covered in a thick layer of vivid, cinnabar red dust, a mineral pigment of mercury sulfide, prized by the Maya for its brilliance and symbolic power. It was this striking coloration that earned her the name, the Red Queen. But who was she? The woman had been buried with extraordinary care. Beside her lay precious offerings, jade ornaments, pearl necklaces, a funerary mask assembled from pieces of malachite. Such treasures suggested a person of immense importance. Yet nowhere within the tomb was her identity explicitly stated. No inscriptions, no carved stelae, no hieroglyphic clues, just the silent testimony of the grave itself. Through careful study of her remains, scientists determined that she had been around 60 years old at the time of her death. Analysis of her teeth revealed a diet rich in maize and elite foods. Her bones spoke of a life lived in privilege, yet her final rest was unusual. The use of cinnabar, so abundantly applied, hinted at ritual significance, but also posed a deadly irony. Mercury from the pigment had permeated her bones, suggesting that what preserved her grandeur may have slowly poisoned her in life. Scholars proposed several candidates for the Red Queen's identity. One prevailing theory suggests she was Lady Ixtzakbu Ajau, the wife of Pakal the Great, a queen in her own right, and a vital figure in the lineage of Palenque's royal house. Her age and timing matched the known life of Tsakbu, and the richness of the tomb seemed fitting for a consort of such a revered ruler. But without a definitive inscription, certainty remains elusive. Others have speculated she could have been another high-ranking noblewoman, perhaps Pakal's mother or a sister who wielded significant influence at court. In Maya society, royal women could hold remarkable power, and Palenque's intricate dynastic histories leave room for many possibilities. And then, there are theories that reach beyond the accepted scholarly frameworks. Some propose that the Red Queen's tomb was deliberately kept secret, her identity veiled, perhaps because of political upheaval, religious reform, or forgotten scandal. Was she a ruler whose legacy was intentionally erased? A priestess whose knowledge of the sacred cycles of time elevated her beyond mere royalty? Or even, as some fringe theorists quietly suggest, a figure connected to a far older, hidden tradition, stretching back before the known Maya dynasties. The presence of cinnabar itself raises subtle questions. Among the Maya, red was the color of life, death, and rebirth, a sacred hue associated with the east and with the rising sun. Was the Red Queen bathed in it as a mark of honor, or was there a deeper ritual at play? Some have even wondered if the heavy use of mercury-based pigments had symbolic purposes beyond mere color, purposes linked to transformation, preservation of the soul, or the crossing of cosmic thresholds. Today, the tomb of the Red Queen remains one of the most evocative discoveries in Mesoamerican archaeology. Her remains have been carefully studied, reconstructed in facial approximations, and even exhibited. And yet, the essential mystery of her life and her death endures. Standing before the sarcophagus today, deep within Temple 13, one can almost hear the muted echoes of forgotten ceremonies, the low chanting of priests, the soft brush of woven garments against stone. The jungle presses close around the ancient city, whispering in a language no longer spoken, guarding its secrets with a patience that human curiosity can only glimpse but never fully breach. Who was the Red Queen? A sovereign, a consort, a priestess, or someone else entirely? Why was her name left unsaid when so many others were immortalized in stone? The jungle keeps her secrets well, and perhaps, hidden beneath layers of earth and time, the answers still wait, in a language we have yet to understand. Among the windswept ruins of ancient Nineveh, where the Tigris River bends through the parched plains of northern Iraq, fragments of a lost world lie buried in dust. Crumbling walls and half-buried statues hint at a city that once rivaled Babylon in grandeur, a capital of an empire that claimed dominion over much of the known world. And within these ruins, hidden for millennia beneath layers of earth and time, the traces of an extraordinary treasure were uncovered, the library of Ashurbanipal, or at least what remains of it. It was in the mid-19th century that British archaeologists, digging through the mounds of Kuyunjik, stumbled upon something unexpected: thousands of clay tablets, etched with the delicate wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform script. In a time when little was known of Mesopotamia's ancient past, these tablets revealed a civilization far older and far more sophisticated than Europe had imagined. The tablets spoke in the voices of ancient scribes, preserving everything from royal decrees to religious hymns, astronomical charts to medical recipes, omens, rituals, and myths. Among them was the first known version of the Epic of Gilgamesh, a tale whose echoes can still be heard in modern literature. Together, these fragments formed the first recognizable library in human history, a deliberate collection of knowledge assembled under the reign of King Ashurbanipal, who ruled Assyria in the 7th century BC. Ashurbanipal, unlike many of his predecessors, was not only a warrior king, but a scholar. He boasted in inscriptions that he could read the intricate signs of Sumerian and Akkadian, languages already ancient in his own time. He commanded his scribes to gather texts from across the empire, copying them if they could not be obtained by conquest. His ambition was not merely to rule with the sword, but with the mind, to capture all the wisdom of the world within his palace walls. And yet, what we call the Library of Ashurbanipal today is only a shadow of what once existed. The site yielded an estimated 30,000 fragments, many damaged or incomplete, spread across different rooms and collections. They suggest a sprawling archive, organized by subject, but no master catalog has ever been found. No record tells us precisely how the library was arranged, what it contained in full, or what might now be lost. The end of Nineveh was swift and brutal. In 612 BC, a coalition of Babylonians, Medes, and others sacked the city, setting it ablaze. Flames and collapse buried the tablets, preserving them ironically through destruction. But the chaos of that fall, and the centuries of decay that followed, scattered and shattered the collection beyond easy reconstruction. What, then, was lost? Some scholars believe that the missing portions could have included histories of earlier civilizations, records of now-forgotten peoples, or mythologies that might reshape our understanding of the ancient Near East. Others wonder if certain texts, philosophical treatises, scientific theories, or even early experiments in law and ethics were obliterated before they could pass into later traditions. And beyond what is missing lies an even deeper question. Was there another part of the library yet to be found? Ashurbanipal's inscription suggests that his ambitions far exceeded what we currently possess. References to secret knowledge, hidden teachings, and forbidden books tantalize historians. Could there have been a second archive, deliberately concealed within the sprawling palace complex? Some have speculated about underground vaults or sealed chambers, places where the most sacred or dangerous writings were kept, away from prying eyes. The idea is not entirely without precedent. Across ancient civilizations, libraries were often more than repositories of literature. They were sanctuaries of esoteric power. In Egypt, in Babylon, and even later in Greece, knowledge was seen as a force to be guarded, protected, and sometimes hidden. If a hidden section of Ashurbanipal's library existed, it has yet to be found. Wars, looting, and the unstable geopolitics of the region have left large portions of ancient Nineveh unexcavated. Somewhere beneath the broken earth, beneath layers of conquest and forgetting, the true heart of the library may still lie waiting. Today, the surviving tablets are scattered across museums and private collections around the world. Scholars continue the painstaking work of piecing them together, reconstructing ancient stories one fragment at a time. In their faded, baked surfaces, the past speaks in broken sentences and lost memories. But the full scope of what was gathered and what was lost remains a mystery. Was Ashurbanipal's library merely a repository of known wisdom, or did it contain knowledge that has vanished entirely from human history? Might it have held secrets that would challenge our understanding of the ancient world, or even of ourselves? In the silent ruins of Nineveh, beneath the shifting sands and crumbled stones, the nameless library endures as a question. A whisper from a vanished empire, inviting us to search, to wonder, and to imagine what might still be hidden beneath the dust of ages. Where the desert winds now sweep across the barren plains of southern Iraq, a few crumbling mounds rise out of the dust like the bones of some long-dead giant. Sparse, dry grasses whisper against broken pottery shards, and the earth bears the faded scars of canals that once brought life to this desolate place. Beneath the silence and emptiness lies the memory of a city, one that some traditions call the first city ever built by human hands. This was Eridu. According to the ancient Sumerians, Eridu was not merely a city. It was a sacred place, the birthplace of kingship, the home of gods. In the Sumerian king list, Eridu is named as the city where kingship descended from heaven. To the people who lived here over 5,000 years ago, Eridu was a place where the mortal world touched the divine. At its heart stood the temple of Enki, god of water, wisdom, and creation. Layer upon layer of temple foundations reveal a history stretching back to around 5,400 BC, a continuous effort, generation after generation, to rebuild and expand the sacred space. Archaeologists have uncovered at least 17 different stages of the temple's construction, each one resting upon the ruins of the last, like a staircase reaching backward into prehistory. Yet, despite its importance, Eridu vanished. By around 2000 BC, the once proud city had been abandoned. Its canals dried up, its ziggurat crumbled, its fields turned to dust. And for centuries afterward, Eridu lived on only in myth, as a memory of a golden age lost to time. What happened to the first city? Mainstream archaeology offers possible explanations. Environmental factors likely played a crucial role. As the climate shifted and the region grew increasingly arid, the intricate system of canals that sustained Eridu's agriculture may have collapsed. Water, once abundant, became scarce. Trade routes shifted. Power centers moved northward, toward new cities like Ur and Uruk, leaving Eridu to wither in the heat. Some scholars suggest that religious and political changes contributed as well. As the great city-states of Sumer rose and fell, the patronage of different gods waxed and waned. Enki's temple may have lost its central importance as other deities and other cities gained prominence. Without the spiritual and economic lifeblood that once made it thrive, Eridu slowly sank into obscurity. But these explanations, while plausible, do not tell the whole story. The speed of Eridu's final abandonment remains a puzzle. The city endured environmental stress for centuries before its ultimate fall. Why, after millennia of adaptation, did it suddenly fail? Why is there so little evidence of gradual decline, of a city slowly shrinking, and instead, the sense of a civilization simply vanishing into the desert? This gap in understanding has opened the door to more speculative theories. Some suggest that Eridu was the victim of a catastrophic event, perhaps a sudden drought, a plague, or a political upheaval so severe that it erased the city almost overnight. Others point to the myths themselves for clues. In the Sumerian flood narratives, precursors to later stories like the biblical account of Noah, Eridu plays a crucial role. Could a localized flood or environmental disaster have struck the region, one dramatic enough to devastate its infrastructure and drive its people away? More fringe theories go even further. In some interpretations of ancient texts, Eridu is seen as not just the first city, but the seat of a mysterious knowledge, an early attempt to bridge the gap between gods and men. Some alternative historians speculate that the ruins conceal traces of lost technologies, spiritual practices, or even interactions with otherworldly forces, long since forgotten by mainstream history. There are whispers, too, of deeper, older layers beneath the visible ruins, structures or artifacts predating known Sumerian civilization, hints of an even earlier, unknown culture. To date, no definitive evidence supports such claims, yet the mystery endures, fueled by the gaps in our knowledge and the sheer age of the place. Today, Eridu is little more than a scar on the landscape, a cluster of eroded tells visited only by archaeologists and occasionally by the desert winds. Its broken bricks and faded temples offer no clear answers. The gods who once walked its streets have fallen silent, and yet, standing among the ruins, one cannot help but wonder. What truly happened to Eridu? Was it a slow unraveling, the inevitable result of time and climate? Or did some forgotten disaster, recorded only in fragments of myth, sweep the city away in a single tragic moment? Might there still be secrets buried beneath the dust, relics of a time when humanity first sought to shape the world, and in doing so, left behind a mystery that refuses to be forgotten. The answers, like the city itself, lie hidden, waiting to be unearthed. In the rolling countryside of Suffolk, England, where green fields stretch endlessly under a restless sky, lies the small village of Woolpit. Today, it is a place of quiet charm, with narrow lanes, thatched roofs, and the slow rhythms of rural life. But beneath its pastoral calm lingers a story that has haunted the landscape for centuries, the strange tale of the green children of Woolpit. It was during the 12th century, in the reign of King Stephen, when the villagers first encountered something they could neither explain nor forget. According to chroniclers of the time, the harvest was underway when workers in the fields came upon two children, a boy and a girl, standing near the wolf pits that had given the village its name. They were alone, frightened, speaking no known language, and their skin, most astonishing of all, was green. Not the sickly pallor of illness, nor the sun-darkened hue of laborers, but a distinct, verdant green, as if they had somehow absorbed the color of the fields around them. The villagers took them in, offering food and shelter. Yet the children refused to eat the bread and meat set before them, surviving only on raw beans pulled straight from their pods. Over time, the girl, the stronger of the two, began to adapt. She learned the local tongue, accepted new foods, and slowly, her greenish tint faded to a more ordinary hue. The boy, however, grew weaker, and before long, he died. When the girl was able to speak freely, she told a story that only deepened the mystery. She said that she and her brother came from a land with no sun, a place of perpetual twilight, where everything was tinged with green. They had been tending their father's flock when they heard a strange sound, like the ringing of bells, and suddenly found themselves in a bright new world. Woolpit. Who were these children? Where had they come from? Mainstream historians have offered several explanations over the years. Some suggest that the children were simply orphans from a nearby Flemish community. During that era, England had seen a significant influx of Flemish immigrants, many of whom faced hostility and violence during times of political turmoil. It is possible, they argue, that the children became lost, traumatized, and malnourished, their green skin a symptom of chlorosis, a form of iron deficiency anemia that can give the complexion a greenish cast. The language barrier could be explained by a dialect unfamiliar to the local villagers. The strange land of twilight might have been a misremembered or misinterpreted account of the dense, dark forests where the children had once lived. And yet, even these rational theories leave questions unanswered. How did the children appear so suddenly, without witnesses or signs of travel? Why was their story, despite its implausibility, recorded not once, but twice, by medieval writers separated by decades? William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall, both respected chroniclers of their time, each deemed the tale remarkable enough to include in their histories, with details too consistent to dismiss easily. Moreover, the imagery evoked by the children's account of a sunless world, a land bathed in perpetual green, resonates curiously with myths and legends found far beyond Suffolk. Stories of hidden realms, parallel worlds, and subterranean lands have surfaced across cultures and centuries. Was the girl recounting a distorted memory of a childhood in unfamiliar surroundings, or was she, as some have speculated, describing something far stranger? Over time, more speculative theories have emerged. Some suggest that the children were from a hidden underground society, a remnant of an ancient people driven below the earth by catastrophe. Others hint at the possibility of a portal, a thin place where the boundaries between worlds momentarily blurred. A few modern writers, reaching even further, have proposed connections to extraterrestrial encounters, imagining the green children as visitors from another world entirely. But amid all the speculation, the mystery remains carefully, stubbornly balanced between wonder and uncertainty. Today, Woolpit is a village at peace with its legend. A simple sign bearing the image of two green-skinned children marks the place where history and folklore meet. Visitors come and go, some seeking answers, others content to simply walk the quiet lanes and wonder. Who were the green children of Woolpit? Lost orphans, hidden refugees, survivors of a forgotten tragedy, or messengers from a realm just beyond the reach of human understanding? The truth, like the faint green memory of their presence, lingers on the edges of certainty, a reminder that sometimes history leaves us questions far more enduring than any answers we may hope to find. Baltimore, Maryland. The year is 1849. The city's cobblestone streets glisten under a cold autumn rain. In the gray light of the early evening, the buildings loom like silent witnesses to something unseen. Somewhere amid the narrow alleyways and weathered taverns, a solitary figure stumbles, disheveled, delirious, and broken. That figure was Edgar Allan Poe. On October 3rd, Poe was found outside Ryan's tavern, barely conscious, wearing clothes that did not belong to him. His mind was clouded, his speech incoherent. He was rushed to Washington College Hospital, where he drifted in and out of a fevered state for 4 days, unable to explain what had happened to him. He died on October 7, 1849, at the age of 40, muttering strange, fragmented words, his last moments as mysterious as the tales he left behind. No death certificate survives. No medical records provide clear answers. The cause of Poe's death remains officially unknown. From the very beginning, the circumstances surrounding his final days defied easy explanation. How had he come to be in Baltimore when he was supposedly en route to New York? Why was he found wearing ill-fitting, second-hand clothes? What had left him in such a ravaged condition, too ill even to tell his own story? The earliest accounts suggest a variety of possible causes: alcohol poisoning, drug overdose, heart failure, even rabies. Poe's struggles with alcohol were known among his contemporaries, and some suggested that a final binge had destroyed him. Yet those who knew him best contested this version, insisting that Poe had long periods of sobriety and that his body was unusually sensitive to even small amounts of drink. Others proposed that he was the victim of a practice known as cooping, a form of election fraud common in 19th century America. In this brutal scheme, unwilling victims were kidnapped, drugged, disguised, and forced to vote multiple times for a candidate under different identities. Baltimore, at the time, was notorious for such practices. Poe, found delirious on an election day near a polling site, fit the pattern disturbingly well. But even the cooping theory leaves haunting gaps. Why did Poe linger for days before dying? Why were his symptoms so severe? Hallucinations, fevers, incoherence. Was there more at play than simple physical abuse? In the years that followed, more theories emerged. Some suggested that Poe suffered from undiagnosed brain lesions brought on by previous injuries or genetic conditions. Others posited diabetes, epilepsy, or even a rare case of cholera contracted during his travels. A more recent hypothesis proposes that he was a victim of carbon monoxide poisoning or heavy metal exposure, both common yet poorly understood dangers in mid-19th century urban life. Yet none of these theories can fully account for all the details recorded in those final, fragmented hours. And then there are the more speculative, unsettling possibilities. Some have whispered of darker forces at work: foul play by enemies, betrayal by friends. Poe's life was marked by poverty, loss, and bitter rivalries. Was he targeted by someone who had reason to silence him, either personally or professionally? His work had earned admiration, but also envy and disdain. His sharp criticism of literary figures had made him enemies among the powerful. Could his death have been more than a tragic accident, a deliberate erasure? Others, reaching beyond the bounds of historical analysis, have pointed to Poe's own writing as eerie foreshadowing. His stories dwelled obsessively on premature burials, madness, and the thin veil between life and death. Was there, in his final days, a collapse of the boundaries between fiction and reality, a descent into the very horrors he so vividly imagined? Or was it, perhaps, simpler and sadder, the final chapter of a man who had wandered too far into the shadows of his own mind, betrayed by a world that had never fully understood him? Today, the resting place of Edgar Allan Poe is marked by a modest grave in Westminster Hall and burying ground, not far from the place where he died. Visitors leave coins, roses, and small tokens, gestures of remembrance for a man whose genius still echoes through the corridors of literature. Yet the true circumstances of his death remain a closed book, a mystery as layered and haunting as any he ever penned. What truly happened to Edgar Allan Poe in those final, fog-shrouded days? Was it illness, accident, malice, or something that cannot be neatly named? The city of Baltimore, the dim taverns, the rain-soaked streets, all keep their secrets well. And perhaps, as with the darkest of Poe's own tales, the truth is meant to remain just out of reach, hidden behind a veil of uncertainty that not even time can lift. In the quiet hills of Zhejiang province, in eastern China, there lies a mystery hidden beneath the earth, a secret that remained untouched by history books, unknown even to the people living directly above it. Here, near the small village of Xi'an Beikun, ponds dotted the landscape for centuries, thought to be no more than natural pools. But in 1992, villagers decided to drain one of these ponds, and what they found stunned the world. Beneath the water's surface was not a natural depression, but the entrance to a vast, meticulously carved cave. Walls perfectly chiseled, ceilings towering overhead, pillars of stone left in place to support the structure, all created with a precision that defied casual explanation. And this was not a single isolated chamber. As more ponds were drained, more caves were discovered, eventually revealing a sprawling network of at least 24 hand-carved underground caverns covering an estimated 30,000 square meters. Each was vast, symmetrical, and decorated with a distinctive pattern of parallel lines etched carefully across the walls and ceilings, as if left deliberately by the ancient artisans who shaped them. The Longyou Caves, as they came to be known, pose a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Who carved them? When? And for what purpose? Mainstream studies have offered some starting points. Geological analysis confirmed that the caves were hewn from solid sandstone, an extraordinarily difficult and time-consuming task, especially without the use of modern machinery. Yet there are no surviving records in Chinese historical texts, no ancient writings, no legends, no oral traditions that speak of their creation. This absence is particularly strange in a culture renowned for its meticulous chronicling of events. For a project of such unimaginable scale, requiring tens of thousands of workers and an intricate logistical operation, to leave no trace in the historical record is almost unprecedented. Based on the tools that would have been available in ancient times, some researchers suggest that the caves could have been carved during the Qin or early Han dynasties, roughly 2,000 years ago. Yet even this is conjecture. No artifacts, no pottery shards, no tools, no remnants of human activity have been found within the caves themselves. They are empty, silent, seemingly abandoned from the moment they were completed. And then there is the craftsmanship itself. Each cave appears to have been planned and executed with mathematical precision, with no signs of error or structural collapse. Massive stone columns were deliberately left in place to support the ceilings. The uniform chisel marks that cover every surface follow an eerily consistent pattern, as if done with a singular methodical intent, not random excavation, but a purposeful artistic signature. If the caves were meant for storage, habitation, or defense, their emptiness is puzzling. No soot stains from fires, no divisions into living spaces, no evidence of prolonged use. They seem more like monuments, but to what? The lack of answers has given rise to a range of speculative theories. Some propose that the Longyou Caves were an ancient underground palace built for a forgotten ruler or dynasty whose records were lost to time. Others suggest that they were ceremonial spaces, perhaps for religious rites so sacred or secret that they were never documented. Still, others wonder if they were designed as subterranean shelters, a response to a cataclysmic event, real or anticipated, that never came to pass. And beyond these theories lie more fringe speculations, that the caves are remnants of an even older civilization, one predating known Chinese history, that they are linked to lost technologies or ancient forms of engineering no longer understood, that they might even be part of a much larger, hidden complex waiting to be uncovered. Despite modern efforts to study them, the Longyou Caves have resisted clear explanation. Dating the caves directly is difficult, and without artifacts to anchor them to a specific period, scholars are left piecing together faint clues. Some small inscriptions discovered nearby suggest ancient activities in the area, but none conclusively link to the construction of the caves themselves. Today, visitors can walk through portions of the Longyou Caves, marveling at their scale, their symmetry, and their silence. The air is cool and heavy underground, the massive columns rising like frozen sentinels. Light spills in from modern stairways and walkways, but in the deeper shadows, the caves seem to breathe, a reminder that we are standing inside a forgotten ambition, an effort whose meaning has slipped away with the centuries. Who were the builders of the Longyou Caves? Were they master artisans, driven by a vision now lost to memory? Survivors of a vanished epoch, leaving behind a monument to resilience or fear? Or were they participants in a tradition so ancient, so sacred, that it was never meant to be shared beyond those who carved stone in the dark? The caves remain, silent, imposing, inexplicable, and perhaps, deep beneath the hills of Zhejiang, the earth still holds more secrets, waiting for the moment when someone will ask the right questions and be ready to listen for the answers. Across the endless expanse of Egypt's western desert, where the horizon blurs beneath the shimmering heat and dunes stretch like frozen waves, silence reigns. The sand here is ancient, sculpted by winds that have blown across these empty plains for millennia. It is a place where the living world feels distant, where the earth itself seems to guard its secrets jealously. And somewhere beneath this sea of sand, it is said, an entire army vanished, swallowed without a trace. The story begins in 525 BC, during the reign of Cambyses II, the ambitious and often ruthless king of the Persian Empire. Having conquered Egypt and overthrown the last pharaoh of the 26th dynasty, Cambyses set his sights even further west, toward the mysterious oracle of Amun at the Siwa oasis. In ancient times, this oracle was revered, a place where gods were said to whisper answers to those who dared to seek them. Herodotus, the Greek historian writing nearly a century later, tells us that Cambyses dispatched an army of 50,000 men to march across the desert and seize the oracle. Their mission was bold, perhaps even sacrilegious, to assert Persian dominance over one of Egypt's most sacred sites. But they never arrived. According to Herodotus, after 7 days of marching through the desert, the army reached a place called the City of the Oasis, thought to be somewhere near modern-day Karga. There, disaster struck. A sudden and violent sandstorm, a Khamsin wind engulfed them, a wall of dust and fury so overwhelming that the soldiers were buried alive, entombed forever beneath the shifting dunes. No survivors, no wreckage, no trace. For centuries, the tale of Cambyses' lost army lived on as legend, an ancient cautionary story about the hubris of kings and the unforgiving power of nature. But whether it was pure myth or rooted in truth has remained one of history's most tantalizing questions. Modern archaeologists and historians have attempted to piece together the possibilities. Some argue that Herodotus, though often considered the father of history, was also a collector of folklore, and that his account might be a stylized retelling of a smaller, less dramatic incident, a detachment lost, perhaps, rather than a full army. Others suggest that logistical failures, lack of water, poor navigation, or internal descent doomed the expedition long before any sandstorm arrived. Recent explorations of Egypt's western desert have uncovered remnants of ancient settlements and caravan routes, suggesting that passage through the desert, while perilous, was possible with careful planning. Yet no definitive traces of Cambyses' forces, no mass graves, no Persian weaponry, no banners or armor have yet been found. And this absence invites more speculative theories. Could the army have simply wandered off course, disoriented by the vast monotony of the landscape, and perished far from their intended path? Could they have been attacked, defeated by desert tribes whose victory was never recorded? Or, as some have whispered, could they have stumbled upon something they were never meant to find, something sacred, something forbidden, and been erased not by accident, but by design? In 2009, two Italian archaeologists, Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione, claimed to have found evidence of the lost army: fragments of bronze weapons, a Persian-style arrowhead, pieces of horse harnesses buried near an ancient caravan route. Their findings sparked international excitement and controversy. Critics argued that while the artifacts were intriguing, they were not conclusive proof of the army's fate, and that centuries of trade and migration across the desert could easily explain such isolated relics. Still, the idea that the desert itself might yet yield up its dead, that beneath the sands, the bones of thousands of soldiers lie waiting, continues to captivate the imagination. Today, standing amid the barren majesty of the western desert, one can almost hear the echoes of that lost expedition: the tramp of sandals across cracked earth, the creak of leather armor, the distant, rising howl of the desert wind. The sands shift endlessly, covering and uncovering the past in a slow, indifferent dance. What truly became of Cambyses' army? Were they undone by nature's merciless hand, victims of an unseen enemy, or casualties of a story that grew in the telling? Somewhere out there, beneath the sun-baked dunes, the answer may still lie hidden, waiting for the day when the desert, ever patient, decides to give up its secret. In the heart of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, behind glass and heavy silence, lies a sight unlike any other. Amid rows of carefully preserved pharaohs and nobles, regal in their golden wrappings, there rests a figure whose very presence seems to disrupt the quiet order of death. A body, twisted, contorted, mouth agape in what appears to be an eternal, soundless scream. This is Unknown Man E. Unlike his fellow mummies, whose faces bear serene, almost peaceful expressions, Unknown Man E was preserved in a state of frozen agony. His head is thrown back, his lips drawn taut over bared teeth, eyes forever closed against whatever terror overtook him. His body, too, defies expectations, wrapped not in the fine linens reserved for royalty, but in sheepskin, a material the ancient Egyptians considered ritually unclean. He was discovered in 1886, buried hastily in the Deir el-Bahari cache, alongside dozens of other royal mummies reinterred to protect them from grave robbers. But Unknown Man E stood apart. His burial lacked ceremony, his wrappings crude and hurried, His identity was unmarked. No cartouche, no inscription, only the scream. Who was this man? And what fate befell him to leave behind such a haunting visage? Initial examinations suggested a violent death. Some theorized poisoning, perhaps even live burial. The unnatural posture of his body, arms and legs bent unnaturally, mouth wide open, hinted at a death full of suffering. The sheepskin shroud, so out of place among the riches of ancient funerary practices, suggested he was cursed, condemned, or at the very least, disgraced. In time, more detailed studies were conducted. CT scans and forensic analyses revealed that, structurally, unknown man E's body was intact. No obvious trauma, no broken bones, no signs of a fatal blow. It seemed he had not been murdered in the conventional sense. Some researchers suggested that rapid death, perhaps by poisoning, had caused a spasm at the moment of death, preserving the final contorted scream in his mummified form. As Egyptologists dug deeper into the mystery, theories about his identity began to emerge. One compelling hypothesis points to Pentauer, the son of Pharaoh Ramses III, a prince who conspired against his own father in what came to be known as the Harem Conspiracy. Ancient judicial documents tell of a trial, a conviction, and the ordered execution, or forced suicide, of those involved. Pentauer, it is said, took his own life, perhaps through poison. Could unknown man E be this disgraced prince, denied an honorable burial, wrapped in the skin of a sheep to signify his shame? The pieces seem to fit, and yet the evidence remains circumstantial. DNA tests have shown that unknown man E shares a genetic relationship with Ramses III, possibly as a son, but definitive identification remains elusive. Was it Pentauer or another royal traitor lost to history? And the questions do not end there. Why such a hurried, dishonorable burial when even convicted conspirators were often afforded proper rites? Why was he placed among the other royals rather than isolated or discarded as a criminal? And most chillingly, was the scream we see today a literal imprint of terror at the moment of death, or something created later through the drying and contracting of muscles during the hurried mummification process? More speculative theories venture even further into the unknown. Some suggest that unknown man E died during a ritual gone wrong, perhaps a magical ceremony intended to protect or curse royal lines. Others wonder if his death was the result of political vengeance so swift and brutal that proper burial customs were discarded entirely. A few fringe thinkers even propose supernatural interpretations, that the scream marks a soul unable to find peace, trapped between worlds by the violent circumstances of his death. Yet, amid all these theories, the truth remains buried, hidden behind the stitched lips of history. Today, visitors to the Egyptian Museum often find themselves pausing before the glass case of unknown man E. Among the many faces of the dead, his is the one that seems to cry out across the centuries, a raw, unfiltered glimpse of fear, pain, and mystery. His presence unsettles, not because of the grandeur of his past life, but because of the stark humanity of his death. Who was he? A prince, a traitor, a victim of forces we can scarcely imagine? Was his scream one of fear, of regret, or of something more unknowable? The sands of Egypt continue to yield their secrets slowly, and perhaps, somewhere in a forgotten tomb or a crumbling papyrus scroll, the final chapter of unknown man E's story waits to be discovered. Until then, he remains what he has always been, a riddle in flesh and bone, a voice frozen in time, calling across the ages for answers that refuse to come. In the hushed corridors of the National Library of Sweden, secured behind layers of glass and careful preservation, rests one of the most enigmatic artifacts ever created. A single book, immense in size and heavy with legend. Its parchment pages seem almost to hum with age, their edges darkened by time, their ink still vivid despite the passing of centuries. This is the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible. The manuscript is a colossal object. Nearly 3 feet tall, weighing over 160 pounds, it is bound in leather and reinforced with ornate metalwork. It contains the entirety of the Latin Vulgate Bible, along with a collection of historical texts, medical treatises, penitential writings, and mystical incantations. But it is not its sheer size or diverse contents that have earned it an infamous reputation. It is the presence of a single, striking image. Filling an entire page, painted in dark, muted colors, is a figure unmistakable, a horned, crouching devil, staring out with an unsettling stillness. Hands raised, claws sharp, mouth frozen in a silent snarl. The figure dominates the manuscript, unlike anything seen in other medieval religious works. Opposite this image is a depiction of the heavenly city, the eternal battle between good and evil laid bare on the parchment. But how did such a book come into being? Historical records trace the Codex Gigas to the early 13th century, to the Benedictine monastery of Podlages in what is now the Czech Republic. Yet the circumstances of its creation are cloaked in myth. According to legend, a single monk, facing execution for breaking his monastic vows, proposed an impossible bargain. He would create a book containing all human knowledge in a single night, and by doing so, redeem his soul. The abbot agreed. As midnight approached and the task proved overwhelming, the desperate monk is said to have turned not to God, but to the devil himself, forging a pact to complete the manuscript in exchange for his soul. Thus, the Devil's Bible was born. Of course, scholars regard this story as medieval folklore, a cautionary tale reflecting the fears and superstitions of the age. Yet the Codex Gigas presents real, tangible puzzles that resist easy dismissal. First, the handwriting. Careful analysis reveals that the entire book was written by a single scribe, an extraordinary feat given its magnitude. What is even more astonishing is the uniformity of the script. From the first page to the last, there is virtually no variation in style, size, or spacing, suggesting that it was penned without significant pause or aging, a consistency almost impossible to achieve over the years it would have realistically taken. Experts estimate that completing the manuscript would have required decades of labor, perhaps 20 to 30 years of continuous, methodical writing. Yet there are no visible signs of fatigue, no inconsistencies in the calligraphy that might betray the passage of time. How could one individual maintain such perfection across so many thousands of lines? And then, there is the strange absence of clear purpose. Despite its biblical texts and scholarly writings, the Codex Gigas lacks annotations, marginalia, or any indication that it was heavily used as a religious or academic tool. It seems to have been created not for study or liturgical use, but as an object in itself, a monolith of knowledge, assembled without clear reason, and dominated by a haunting image that invites far more questions than answers. Over the centuries, the Codex Gigas passed through many hands, surviving the destruction of its original monastery during the Hussite Wars, and later becoming a prized possession of the Swedish army after the 30 Years' War. It has journeyed through conflict, fire, and exile, its massive bulk a silent witness to the shifting tides of history. Some speculate that it was created as a grand gesture of devotion, or perhaps penance, by a single monk, working obsessively to save his soul through an offering of unimaginable labor. Others wonder if it was an attempt to compile a universal compendium of medieval knowledge, albeit with a strange, almost obsessive emphasis on penitence and sin. And there are those who linger on the darker possibilities. Could the Codex Gigas have been conceived with more occult purposes? Was the inclusion of the devil's portrait simply an act of medieval theatricality? or a sign of deeper, hidden traditions, threading quietly through the monastic orders. Some have even speculated about coded messages buried within its pages, secrets locked behind the veneer of scripture and ancient wisdom. Yet for all its mass and mystery, the Codex Gigas remains silent. Today, visitors to the library in Stockholm can stand before it, an overwhelming presence even behind glass. The pages, when opened, seem almost to breathe. The image of the devil still confronts the viewer with a terrible, quiet power, unchanged after 8 centuries. Who truly created the Codex Gigas? Was it the lonely labor of a penitent monk, the desperate work of a soul bargaining with forces beyond understanding, or something still stranger? Was the book intended as a gift, a warning, or a mirror for the fears of an uncertain world? The answers remain hidden in the heavy folds of ancient parchment, in the steady, tireless hand that once traced every letter. And perhaps, in the end, the Codex Gigas was never meant to explain itself, only to endure. The old timbered halls of Cumnor Place once stood amid the green and mist-laden fields of Oxfordshire, their walls steeped in silence and heavy with secrets. Today, little remains, the manor long since demolished, the stones scattered and buried beneath centuries of change. Yet the memory of what happened there has not faded. It lingers, like a shadow, tied forever to the mysterious death of Amy Robsart. It was September 8, 1560, when Amy Robsart, the wife of Robert Dudley, was found dead at the foot of a staircase within Cumnor Place. She was just 28 years old. At first glance, the scene might have appeared tragically simple. A woman alone, felled by a fall. Her neck was broken. Yet almost immediately, whispers began to circulate, whispers that have never truly been silenced. Amy was, by all accounts, in poor health during the final years of her life. Letters from friends and observers suggest she suffered from a debilitating illness, perhaps a tumor or even breast cancer, conditions which could have weakened her bones and balance. It would not have been impossible, some argue, for a frail woman to lose her footing and tumble down a flight of stairs. And yet, doubts persist. Robert Dudley, Amy's husband, was a favorite of Queen Elizabeth I, a favorite whose relationship with the young queen sparked constant gossip and suspicion throughout the court. Rumors of affection, ambition, and possibly more swirled around them. If Amy were out of the way, some whispered, Dudley might be free to marry Elizabeth, strengthening his power beyond what his birth alone could ever grant him. Historians note that Dudley, aware of these murmurings, insisted on a formal inquiry into his wife's death. A jury of local gentlemen examined the body and surroundings and officially ruled the death an accident. No evidence of foul play was found. No charges were ever brought. Yet, the circumstances remain troubling. On the morning of her death, Amy reportedly insisted that all of her servants attend the nearby fair, leaving her alone in the house. Why did she want to be left by herself? Was it a moment of melancholy, a wish for solitude, or something more foreboding? The staircase itself, according to later accounts, was relatively short. Could such a fall, in the absence of a violent push or deliberate harm, truly have been fatal? The broken neck speaks of considerable force. Some have suggested that Amy might have thrown herself down deliberately, weary of illness and isolation. Others posit that she was pushed, but if so, by whom? An assassin in Dudley's employ? A political enemy seeking to implicate him? There are even more speculative theories. Some propose that Amy's death was orchestrated not by Dudley, but by Elizabeth's own advisors, men who feared the scandal and instability that might follow a royal marriage to a subject. Better, perhaps, to eliminate the problem quietly, however ruthlessly, than to allow dangerous ambition to disrupt the fragile balance of power. Still, others suggest a stranger, quieter tragedy, that Amy, increasingly isolated and ill, simply lost her footing, and that the timing of her death, so convenient, so suspicious, was nothing more than grim coincidence, later twisted into intrigue by a court and a nation addicted to scandal. Today, with the passing of nearly 5 centuries, the truth seems more elusive than ever. Contemporary sources are fragmented, colored by bias and rumor. The building itself is gone, erasing any chance for modern forensic investigation. We are left only with testimonies, second-hand accounts, and the heavy weight of speculation. And so, Amy Robsart remains a figure trapped between innocence and conspiracy, her death an unsolved puzzle at the crossroads of personal tragedy and political ambition. Was she a victim of murder, caught in a web of courtly maneuvering far beyond her control? Did she choose her own fate, seeking escape from an existence grown intolerable? Or was her death, in the end, a simple, heartbreaking accident, rendered sinister only by the shadows cast by those who survived her? The empty fields where Cumnor Place once stood are silent now. Only the restless winds, moving through the grass and hedgerows, seem to whisper of what once occurred there, a secret long buried, but never truly forgotten. Along the winding Natchez Trace, a lonely and ancient trail carved deep into the wilds of Tennessee, the dense woods seem to lean inward, muffling the sounds of the outside world. Here, among the silent forests and the mist that clings to the low hills, stands a small, weathered monument, a broken column of stone, deliberately unfinished. It marks the place where Meriwether Lewis met his mysterious end. It was October 11th, 1809, when Lewis, famed explorer, soldier, and governor, was found dead at Grinder's Stand, a remote inn along the trace. He was only 35 years old. His body bore gunshot wounds, one to the head, another to the abdomen. His death, recorded in the sparse language of the time, was ruled a suicide. But even in those first confused hours, questions arose, questions that have never truly been answered. Meriwether Lewis was, by every measure, a man who had carried the weight of a young nation's ambitions. As co-leader of the famed Lewis and Clark expedition, he had charted the vast, unknown reaches of the American West, mapping rivers, forging relations with indigenous nations, and bringing back detailed accounts of the continent's hidden wonders. His name was synonymous with exploration, courage, and discovery. Yet in the years that followed his triumphant return, Lewis's life seemed to unravel. As governor of the Louisiana Territory, he struggled with political enemies, financial woes, and bouts of deep depression. He turned at times to alcohol and was rumored to suffer from what some described as melancholy, a term that could encompass anything from clinical depression to the lingering effects of physical illness, such as malaria or syphilis. On his final journey eastward, Lewis traveled alone, determined to settle government debts and defend his tarnished reputation. He was carrying important documents, and perhaps, too, the burden of a mind darkened by isolation and disillusionment. The official account, given by the innkeeper's wife, tells of a night filled with strange noises, of Lewis pacing, muttering to himself, and finally, gunshots. She claimed he lived for a short time after shooting himself, asking for water, struggling on the floor before he finally succumbed to his wounds. But inconsistencies haunt the testimony. Some accounts suggest that Lewis's wounds were odd for a suicide, particularly the chest wound, which appeared severe enough to have been fatal on its own. Others point out that it would have been difficult, though not impossible, for a man to inflict 2 such devastating shots upon himself. There were also whispers that Lewis's pistols were unreliable, that they may have misfired or required unusually forceful handling. And there is the troubling behavior of those who found him. The innkeeper, Robert Grinder, provided vague, shifting stories. No proper inquest was ever held, no detailed autopsy conducted. For a death so sudden, so shocking, The investigation was strikingly casual, almost as if those involved wished the matter to pass quietly into history. Speculation soon took root. Was it truly suicide, the tragic end of a man worn down by disease and despair? Or was it murder, a robbery gone wrong, or something even darker? Some theorists suggest that Lewis's political enemies, angered by his outspoken defense of land claims and federal interests, might have arranged his death. Others point to the importance of the documents he was carrying, hinting that secrets, perhaps about the vast, unsettled territories of the West, could have made him a target. In a wilderness where law was a distant concept, who would have stood to protect him? Still others wonder about the innkeepers themselves. Was Lewis simply a convenient victim for a desperate act of theft, or did they panic after an accidental altercation and seek to cover their tracks? Yet, amid all these possibilities, there remains the simple, somber truth of Lewis's state of mind. His letters in the months before his death betray a deepening sadness, a sense of isolation even among friends. His journey along the Natchez Trace was not merely a physical one, but a passage through the darkened corridors of his own spirit. Today, visitors to his grave find a landscape much as he left it, rugged, isolated, beautiful, and unforgiving. The broken column atop his memorial speaks not only to a life cut short, but to an unfinished story, a narrative fractured by silence, by speculation, and by the passing of time. What truly happened that night at Grinder's Stand? Was it despair, misfortune, or betrayal that ended the life of one of America's greatest explorers? Were the gunshots fired by his own hand, or by another's in the darkness? The woods along the Natchez Trace hold their secrets close, and the winds that stir the leaves whisper no answers. They only invite us to wonder, and to remember. In the glass cases of quiet museums across Europe, small, curious objects sit under soft pools of light. Cast in bronze, sometimes hollow, sometimes with slight traces of corrosion, they resemble tiny, intricate sculptures from a forgotten world. They are shaped like 12-sided polyhedrons, precise, geometric, each face bearing a round hole of varying size, and at every corner, a small sphere. These are the Roman Dodecahedrons. Over 100 of these enigmatic artifacts have been discovered, scattered across what was once the farthest reaches of the Roman Empire, in Britain, in Gaul, in the lands along the Rhine and the Danube. No two are exactly alike. They range in size from a few centimeters to larger forms that fit easily within a human hand. Some are rough and utilitarian, others are elaborately decorated with patterns and fine craftsmanship. And yet, for all their careful construction, their purpose remains utterly unknown. No surviving Roman text mentions them. No carvings depict their use. No inscriptions explain their meaning. They exist in silence. Objects without a name, without a clear function, without a historical anchor. What, then, were they? Over the years, scholars and amateurs alike have proposed a range of theories. Some suggest they were instruments of war, perhaps used to calibrate the trajectories of ballistae or catapults, devices whose complex mechanisms might have required precise measurements. Others posit they were gauges for measuring the diameter of pipes or other engineering purposes, though no standardization in hole size supports this idea. Another theory imagines them as tools of agriculture, perhaps for determining the optimal planting times based on astronomical observations. Their discovery in northern provinces, where the Roman Empire faced harsher climates and greater agricultural challenges, seems to lend some faint support to this possibility. Could the dodecahedrons have been practical tools for farmers, devices whose knowledge was passed down through use rather than through written instruction? Still others point toward religious or mystical purposes. Some of the dodecahedrons were found among grave goods, suggesting a ritual significance, Their perfect symmetry, their enigmatic form, could have symbolized cosmic or spiritual concepts, their true meaning understood only by an initiated few. Could they have been relics of a mystery cult, instruments in rites now lost to history? Were they objects of power, representing the movements of the heavens, the balance of the seasons, or the hidden geometry of the universe? There are even more speculative suggestions. Some believe the dodecahedrons were gaming devices, ancient predecessors to dice, or instruments for casting lots. Others imagine them as holders for candles, though the lack of soot and their often delicate construction argues against heavy use as lighting tools. A few have ventured theories that border on the fantastical, that they were surveying instruments for lost Roman technologies, or even relics from contact with other, unknown civilizations. But amid all these ideas, the evidence remains stubbornly incomplete. The contexts in which the dodecahedrons have been found vary greatly. Some were discovered in hoards alongside coins and jewelry. Others lay hidden among the remnants of military camps or civilian settlements. None were found in the great centers of Roman civilization, Rome itself, or the wealthy cities of the Mediterranean, but rather on the fringes, in the misty, contested lands of the empire's edge. This geographical detail has led some to speculate that the dodecahedrons were local inventions rather than products of Rome's central authority, artifacts born of a cultural synthesis between Roman knowledge and the practices of indigenous tribes. If so, then their secret might lie not in the Roman records, but in the silent traditions of peoples who left no written histories of their own. Today, the Roman dodecahedrons remain objects of fascination and frustration. Modern recreations, experiments, and computer simulations have attempted to reverse engineer their function, but no theory has yet commanded universal acceptance. In their quiet, unassuming way, they stand as reminders that even in one of the most thoroughly studied civilizations of the ancient world, mysteries endure, not grand temples or lost cities, but small, human things, created with skill and intention, whose meaning has drifted away like smoke on the wind. Were the Roman dodecahedrons tools, talismans, or toys? Symbols of power, or simple instruments for daily life? Were they prized, revered, or simply forgotten when their moment in history passed? The artifacts themselves offer no answers. They merely exist, silent and stubborn, inviting us to wonder not only about their purpose, but about the countless other lost understandings of the ancient world, knowledges that lived once, brightly, and then vanished. Somewhere in the quiet spaces between history and memory, the Roman dodecahedrons still keep their secret. Stretching across the barren landscapes of the Middle East, from the rocky plateaus of Jordan to the windswept deserts of Syria and Saudi Arabia, strange, faint lines can be seen from the sky. They trace patterns across the earth, silent and immense, their designs invisible to those standing at ground level. Only from above do they reveal their full form, vast, ancient structures shaped like enormous kites. They are known today as the desert kites. First recorded by pilots flying over the region in the early 20th century, these mysterious stone constructions sparked immediate curiosity. Long, low walls, sometimes extending for hundreds of meters, stretch out in converging lines, leading into enclosures or pit traps. In many cases, the shapes resemble a wide funnel, narrowing into a point, like the tail of a kite trailing behind it. But who built these structures, and for what purpose? Archaeologists have uncovered thousands of these desert kites scattered across the Near East and Central Asia. Their sheer scale suggests a coordinated effort by communities long vanished, peoples who left behind no written records, no direct testimony of their intentions. Dating of associated materials suggests that many of the kites were constructed between 8000 and 2000 BC, making them some of the oldest large-scale human-made structures on Earth. The most accepted theory is that the kites were hunting traps. Herd animals, gazelles, ibex, or wild sheep, would be driven into the narrowing walls, funneled into confined spaces where they could be slaughtered more easily. In an environment as harsh and unforgiving as the desert, such ingenious mass hunting strategies would have been crucial for survival. Yet even this explanation leaves lingering questions. The low height of the walls, sometimes no more than knee level, seems inadequate to physically block fast-moving animals. Did the walls serve more as psychological barriers, subtle guides in the open landscape? Were nets, wooden structures, or other perishable materials once strung between them, long since vanished beneath the weight of time? And beyond their function, the scale and complexity of the kites suggest a level of social organization that challenges earlier assumptions about prehistoric desert communities. Coordinating the construction and use of such massive structures would have required leadership, planning, and cooperation on a scale comparable to much later agricultural societies. Could the desert kites hint at an early, forgotten phase of social development, a moment when humans, still largely nomadic, began to work together in ways that foreshadowed the rise of cities and civilizations? There are also stranger theories. Some have speculated that the kites served ritualistic purposes, that the great hunts were not merely economic activities, but sacred ceremonies intertwined with the spiritual life of ancient peoples. In this view, the kites were not just traps, but theaters of life and death, places where the fate of animals and humans became part of a larger, cosmological drama. Others have suggested that the structures had astronomical significance. Could the orientation of the kites align with certain celestial events, much like other ancient monuments around the world? Could they represent forgotten calendrical systems woven into the fabric of everyday survival? A more fringe idea imagines that the desert kites were not designed for hunting at all, but served as early territorial markers, boundaries of influence, or even primitive communication systems, visible only from elevated points or distant hills. Despite decades of study, no single interpretation has answered all the mysteries they pose. Satellite imagery continues to reveal new kite formations, many in regions too remote or dangerous to excavate properly. Each new discovery raises more questions. Why do some areas teem with dozens of kites while others remain barren? Why do the designs vary so greatly in complexity and form? Were they used for centuries or abandoned after only brief periods? Today, standing in the desert amid the broken stones and faded lines, it is difficult to imagine the scenes that once unfolded here. The cries of hunters, the stampede of frightened herds, the ancient strategies passed from one generation to the next, all have been swallowed by the silence of time. What survives is only the outline, the whisper of an idea carved into the earth, the shadow of lives lived under the wide, pitiless skies. Were the desert kites tools of survival, testaments to human ingenuity against the harshness of nature? Were they sites of ritual, rich with meanings now beyond our grasp? Or do they hint at an even deeper story, a chapter of human history still waiting to be fully uncovered beneath the shifting sands? For now, the desert kites remain as they have for thousands of years, vast, quiet, inscrutable. Calling out, perhaps, to those who still dare to ask the questions the desert itself has long since learned to keep. Beneath the shifting sands of Saqqara, Egypt's ancient necropolis, lies a labyrinth few have ever seen. Carved deep into the bedrock, dim corridors stretch into darkness, their silence heavy with the weight of centuries. Here, among the narrow tunnels and chambers, immense stone boxes rest, colossal sarcophagi, each one cut with a precision that seems almost beyond comprehension. This is the Serapeum of Saqqara. First rediscovered in the 19th century by Auguste Mariette, the Serapeum was believed to be the burial place of the Apis bulls, sacred animals worshipped in life and venerated in death. The Apis cult, tied to the god Ptah and later associated with Osiris and Serapis, flourished for over a millennium, its rites woven into the spiritual fabric of ancient Egyptian society. Yet the sarcophagi themselves defy easy understanding. Each one is carved from a single block of granite or basalt, weighing between 60 and 80 tons. Their surfaces are astonishingly smooth, their corners sharp and precise, their interiors polished to a mirror-like finish. The lids alone, some weighing as much as 30 tons, fit so perfectly that not even a razor blade could easily slide between the seams. How were these massive sarcophagi transported through the cramped, twisting tunnels of the Serapeum? What techniques did ancient engineers use to carve, move, and position stones of such impossible scale with such remarkable finesse? Mainstream archaeology offers some answers. It is believed that the sarcophagi were quarried in Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south, and transported along the Nile using boats and sledges. Workers would have used simple copper tools, sand, and patience, employing techniques refined over centuries of monumental construction. Once at Saqqara, ramps, levers, and raw manpower would have been employed to maneuver the boxes into their resting places. And yet, doubts persist. The precision of the craftsmanship seems to exceed what soft copper chisels and basic techniques could easily achieve, particularly on hard granite. Some Egyptologists acknowledge that while the ancient Egyptians had remarkable skill, the exact methods used to polish and perfect the sarcophagi's interiors remain unclear. No detailed ancient texts survive describing the techniques, leaving room for wonder and speculation. Moreover, the intended purpose of these giant sarcophagi raises further questions. Many of the boxes are empty. Few inscriptions decorate their massive surfaces. While some were indeed associated with Apis bull burials, the sheer number, size, and effort involved suggests that more may have been at stake than the burial of animals alone. Were the sarcophagi truly intended for the sacred bulls, or was there a deeper, now forgotten, purpose? Alternative theories have emerged over the years. Some researchers propose that the Serapeum predates the Apis cult's burial practices, and that the sarcophagi were repurposed, their original function lost to time. Others suggest that the boxes were not tombs at all, but rather had a ritual, technological, or even symbolic function linked to lost knowledge of vibration, sound, or energy. The mirror-like polish inside the boxes, the careful shaping, the hermetically sealing lids, all hint, they argue, at a purpose far more complex than mere storage of earthly remains. More speculative theories go even further. Could the Serapeum have been part of a now-vanished phase of civilization, one whose engineering capabilities have been forgotten? Were the boxes designed for unknown rituals, capable of influencing the body, the spirit, or even the surrounding environment? Some fringe researchers even entertain the possibility that the sarcophagi were intended as containment vessels, not for bodies, but for something else altogether. Of course, such theories remain outside the realm of accepted academic discourse. Yet the mystery persists, fueled by the undeniable craftsmanship and the immense effort invested in creating something so enduring, so exact, and yet so enigmatic. Walking the silent tunnels today, the weight of the stone above and around presses in like the memory of an ancient, unsolved riddle. The polished black surfaces reflect the dim light in strange, ghostly patterns. Each giant sarcophagus seems less like a simple box and more like a monument to something lost. An idea, a belief, a knowledge buried deeper than stone. What truly drove the creation of the Serapeum's giant sarcophagi? Was it devotion, ingenuity, or something that modern understanding has yet to grasp? Were they simple tombs or silent witnesses to a forgotten chapter of human history? The answers, like the heavy lids of the sarcophagi themselves, remain sealed. And the Serapeum, quiet and enduring beneath the sands, continues to guard its secrets, inviting us only to wonder. In the vast emptiness of Egypt's western desert, where the golden sands stretch unbroken to the horizon, there is a place where time itself seems to blur. Beneath the fierce sun, among rocky outcrops and dry valleys, ancient bones lie exposed, not of humans, nor of the desert's modern creatures, but of something far stranger. Massive skeletons of whales, some 40 million years old, emerge from the earth like the ruins of some forgotten Titan race. This is Wadi al-Hitan, the Valley of the Whales. At first glance, it seems almost impossible. The bones are not fragmented or shattered by time. Many are complete, astonishingly preserved, their delicate structures splayed across the desert floor as if frozen mid-drift. Ribs arc into the empty sky, vertebrae sprawl across the sand. Massive jawbones, lined with ancient teeth, hint at creatures both familiar and alien. How could whales, creatures of the open ocean, come to rest here, hundreds of miles from the nearest shore, in the heart of a lifeless desert? Science offers an answer, at least in part. During the Eocene epoch, around 40 to 50 million years ago, this barren region was covered by a vast, shallow sea. It was a world teeming with early forms of marine life, a place where ancient whales, not yet the fully aquatic giants we know today, swam and hunted in warm waters. The remains at Wadi al-Hitan tell the story of that distant age, of creatures like Basilosaurus and Dorudon, whales with long serpentine bodies, small hind limbs, and rows of sharp teeth. These species represent a crucial chapter in the evolution of whales, a moment when mammals, having returned to the water, still bore the anatomical remnants of their land-dwelling ancestors. Yet mysteries linger, layered among the bones. Why are so many skeletons so well preserved, lying as if they died in place, untouched by the chaos that usually scatters and destroys remains over such unimaginable spans of time? Why do some show signs of violent death, with bite marks and broken bones, while others seem to have simply drifted to the seafloor in silent extinction? And then there are the even stranger anomalies. Some of the fossils at Wadi al-Hitan include remains of whales with unusual deformities, creatures whose bones grew twisted, malformed, or incomplete. Was this the result of genetic mutations, a population under stress from environmental changes? Or were these early whales facing pressures, predators, or catastrophes that left marks not just on individuals, but on entire generations? Mainstream geology and paleontology offer plausible explanations. Shifting sea levels, changing climates, and evolving ecosystems could have created the conditions necessary both for mass deaths and for the extraordinary fossilization that preserved the valley's secrets. Sediments, rich with minerals, would have buried the remains rapidly, sealing them away from decay. And yet, the concentration of so many complete skeletons in such a remote and unlikely location continues to invite deeper wonder. Some researchers have speculated about localized die-offs, perhaps toxic algal blooms, or sudden changes in salinity that could have devastated marine life. Others suggest that the valley once lay along a migration route, a place where vulnerable populations gathered seasonally, only to fall victim to catastrophic events. There are even more speculative ideas. Might ancient magnetic anomalies, gravitational shifts, or other subtle forces have played a role in steering these creatures toward their fate? Could the very landscape itself, long before it became desert, have harbored features now erased by time? Features that shaped the life and death of these early whales in ways we have yet to understand? And there is the profound mystery of the transition the fossils represent. From land to sea, from legs to fins, from breathless sprints across ancient plains to the slow, weightless drifting of the deep. What unknown paths, what lost worlds, lie between the skeletons scattered across Wadi al-Hitan and the whales that roam the oceans today? Today, the Valley of the Whales is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protected as a place of extraordinary natural history. Yet, to walk among the silent bones is to feel something more than scientific curiosity. It is to step into a story so vast, so ancient, that it slips beyond the grasp of easy understanding. The sun blazes overhead, the winds whisper across the sand, and the great bones of the whales, bathed in golden light, lie still, a reminder of a time when this desert was an ocean, and of mysteries that stretch back not just thousands, but millions of years. What happened here, at the end of the ancient sea? What forces shaped the creatures who swam these vanished waters? And what remains yet to be uncovered beneath the sands? The Valley of the Whales keeps its secrets, as it has for eons, waiting patiently for those who still seek to listen. In the dusty vaults of the National Museum of Iraq, amid relics of ancient civilizations and empires long fallen to silence, sits an object that seems oddly out of place. It is simple in appearance, a small clay jar, sealed with asphalt, containing a corroded copper cylinder, and inside that, an iron rod. At first glance, it could easily be mistaken for an ordinary storage vessel, forgotten by time. But this unassuming artifact is known today as the Baghdad Battery, and it raises questions that have yet to find definitive answers. The artifact was unearthed in the 1930s near modern-day Baghdad, among the ruins of an ancient village thought to date back to the Parthian period, around 250 BC to 224 AD. Alongside more traditional pottery and everyday items, this peculiar vessel caught the attention of archaeologists and historians alike. What made the jar so intriguing was its construction. The copper cylinder, carefully placed within the clay pot, and the presence of iron suggested a configuration capable, under the right conditions, of generating an electrical charge. If filled with an acidic liquid, vinegar or wine, for example, the arrangement could theoretically function as a rudimentary galvanic cell, a battery. But why would an ancient culture build such a device? The mainstream theories offer cautious interpretations. Some suggest that if the jar was indeed used as a battery, its purpose might have been practical, perhaps for electroplating small objects with precious metals, coating surfaces with a thin layer of gold or silver to enhance their value and beauty. Yet no confirmed evidence of electroplated artifacts from the Parthian era has been found. And more puzzling still, no written descriptions or illustrations from the time reference anything resembling electricity or galvanic reactions. Was the Baghdad Battery an experimental tool, used by a select few artisans whose techniques were never recorded? Or was it something else entirely? Some scholars argue that the jar might have served a purely ceremonial or symbolic purpose, perhaps used in religious rituals, where the mild tingling sensation of an electric current could have been interpreted as a divine experience. In ancient temples, where the boundary between natural phenomena and the supernatural was thin, even the smallest wonder could inspire awe. But the absence of contextual evidence leaves the door open to more speculative theories. Some have imagined the Baghdad Battery as part of a much larger, forgotten technological tradition, a glimpse into an ancient science lost to history. Could there have been other devices, now decayed or undiscovered, that relied on similar principles? Was this jar a relic of a broader understanding of electricity, one that rose briefly and vanished before it could leave a more lasting imprint? Fringe theories venture further still. To some, the Baghdad Battery hints at the possibility of knowledge passed down from even older, unknown civilizations, societies capable of manipulating natural forces in ways that challenge conventional timelines. Others weave it into broader narratives of ancient wisdom, suggesting that the electrical principles rediscovered in the modern era were not inventions, but rediscoveries of knowledge once widely known and then catastrophically forgotten. Yet, amid the speculation, sober voices urge caution. Replication experiments in modern times have shown that a device like the Baghdad Battery could indeed produce small voltages, enough to cause a faint tingle, but not enough to power any substantial tool. The design, while capable of generating electricity, is simple and primitive, suggesting either an early step toward greater technological development or a coincidental arrangement misunderstood through modern eyes. Some archaeologists even suggest that the artifact's resemblance to a battery may be misleading. The jar could have been used simply to store sacred scrolls, oils, or other ritual objects, with the copper and iron components serving structural or symbolic purposes unrelated to electricity. Today, the original Baghdad Battery, along with several similar artifacts, remains under study. With the loss and looting that accompanied modern conflicts in Iraq, access to these relics has been limited, slowing further research and leaving many questions unanswered. Standing before the artifact today, it is easy to feel the pull of its mystery. Small enough to be held in the hands, yet heavy with implications, the jar seems to straddle two worlds, one foot planted firmly in the ancient past, the other reaching into the modern age of discovery and invention. Was the Baghdad Battery a tool, a sacred object, a scientific experiment, or something we have yet to imagine? Was it an isolated curiosity, a lost technology, or merely a vessel whose secrets have been misunderstood across the gap of centuries? The clay, the copper, the iron, they remain silent. And the Baghdad Battery, like so many relics of the ancient world, continues to guard its secret beneath layers of time and speculation, inviting us only to wonder. In the remote highlands of western China, where the rugged mountains of Qinghai province meet the edge of desolate salt flats, rises a stark and lonely peak, Mount Baigong. Wind-swept and barren, it towers above the arid plain like a silent sentinel, its craggy slopes marked by few signs of life. But hidden within its shadow lies one of the most peculiar and debated discoveries in modern archaeology, a network of ancient, unexplained structures known as the Baigong Pipes. Near the base of the mountain, nestled among three small caves, protrude strange formations. Rusted and brittle, they appear at first to be the remnants of old metal pipes, some embedded deep within the rock itself, others jutting out toward the surface. Some of these tubes are hollow, others are solid. A few lead down into the earth, vanishing into the depths of Mount Baigong. Others, scattered across the nearby Tuosu lake bed, seem to form broken conduits between land and water. How could such an arrangement have come to be, in a place so harsh, so remote, and so empty? Local legends speak of the mountain as the dwelling place of mysterious beings, tales of ancient visitors from the sky, long woven into the folklore of the region. But when Chinese scientists first began to investigate the Baigong Pipes in the early 2000s, they approached the mystery with caution and curiosity. Initial studies revealed that many of the pipes were composed primarily of iron oxide, silicon dioxide, and calcium oxide. Some appeared highly corroded, suggesting great age. Intriguingly, analysis indicated that certain segments of the formations were over 90% pure metal, while others contained organic plant material that had somehow fossilized within the pipes themselves. Were these pipes the product of a natural geological process, or evidence of something far more unexpected? Mainstream explanations tend toward the geological. Some scientists propose that the formations are simply fossilized tree roots, ancient vegetation that, over the millennia, was slowly replaced by minerals seeping through the groundwater, creating hollow, tube-like structures encased in stone. This process, known as diagenesis, is well documented in the natural world, albeit rarely on such a scale or with such a seemingly artificial appearance. Others suggest that iron-rich groundwater, could have deposited minerals into pre-existing fractures in the rock, creating pipe-like features as the sediments solidified over time. Yet, even within these naturalistic theories, questions remain. The regularity of some of the pipes, their consistent diameters, and the way they appear to connect the caves to the lake suggest a level of organization that seems unusual for random geological formations. Moreover, some reports describe the pipes as forming branching networks, almost like primitive plumbing systems, an observation that continues to fuel more speculative interpretations. Fringe theories abound. Some suggest the Baigong Pipes are remnants of an ancient, now vanished civilization, one capable of sophisticated engineering feats whose history has been lost to erosion, disaster, or time itself. Others propose even more exotic possibilities, that the pipes are the artifacts of extraterrestrial visitors, constructed in a distant epoch when conditions on Earth were very different from today. These theories, while tantalizing, lack concrete evidence. No inscriptions, no tools, no other artifacts have been found in association with the pipes. No architectural remains or cultural materials hint at a lost society hidden beneath Mount Baigong. The mystery remains rooted largely in the anomaly of the pipes themselves, their location, their form, and the stubborn absence of a clear, satisfying explanation. Today, access to the Baigong Pipes is limited. The remoteness of the region, combined with political sensitivities and environmental challenges, has left much of the site unexamined by independent researchers. Satellite imagery and early reports offer glimpses, but the full story remains tantalizingly out of reach. Standing at the foot of Mount Baigong, with the dry wind sweeping across the empty landscape, it is easy to feel the weight of unanswered questions. The mountain looms, impassive, as it has for untold ages. The pipes, silent and corroded, hint at a story written long before recorded history, a story whose meaning has been buried by time, if it was ever truly understood at all. Were the Baigong Pipes formed by nature's slow and silent hand, sculpted by forces we only partially comprehend? Were they crafted by ancient peoples whose ingenuity has been forgotten? Or do they represent something stranger, a chapter in Earth's deep past that we have yet to uncover? For now, the winds of Qinghai whisper through the broken tubes, and the stones of Mount Baigong keep their counsel, inviting us to wonder and to keep searching. Far to the north, beyond the last traces of familiar roads, where the tundra stretches out in frozen silence under endless skies, lies a lonely expanse known as the Kivalik region of Canada. Here, near the cold waters of Lake Anjikuni, the wind whispers across barren hills, and the snow seems to swallow all sound. It was in this isolated, almost forgotten place that one of history's strangest mysteries is said to have unfolded, the unexplained disappearance of the Anjikuni village. The story first emerged in 1930, when a trapper named Joe LaBelle stumbled into the settlement seeking shelter. An experienced outdoorsman, familiar with the rhythms of life in the northern wilderness, LaBelle expected to find the Inuit community active and welcoming, fires burning, smoke rising from the snow-laden huts. Instead, he found only silence. The village appeared abandoned. Food sat untouched over extinguished fires. Sled dogs were found dead from starvation, still tethered to posts. In the snow, no fresh footprints led away from the camp. No sign of hurried flight, no trail to follow. Personal belongings, essential supplies, even weapons remained where they had been left, as if the villagers had simply ceased to exist in a single moment. Alarmed, LaBelle made the long journey to the nearest telegraph office to report what he had seen. Soon after, a search party was dispatched. Accounts from that time claim the investigators confirmed the trapper's discovery. An entire community, numbering dozens of men, women, and children, had vanished without a trace. But what could have caused such a disappearance? Mainstream historians have questioned the details. Some suggest the story may have been exaggerated over time, perhaps confused with the natural seasonal movements of semi-nomadic Inuit groups. Others propose that harsh environmental conditions, starvation, disease, or a sudden natural disaster could have forced the villagers to abandon the site rapidly, although the absence of tracks remains difficult to explain. Complicating matters further is the nature of the records themselves. The earliest written reports about the Anjikuni mystery come from secondary sources, often mixing fact with elements of frontier storytelling. Some modern researchers argue that the tale, while rooted in real events, has grown over the decades into something far larger, shaped by the human desire to find wonder and fear in the unknown. Yet even when approached cautiously, unsettling questions linger. Why would experienced hunters and gatherers, living in one of the world's harshest environments, abandon essential supplies and shelter during the deadly winter months? Why leave no discernible path, no clue to their destination? Why would the sled dogs, so vital for survival, be left to die? An act utterly at odds with the Inuit way of life. More speculative theories suggest darker possibilities. Some have proposed mass abduction, either by hostile groups or, in the more extreme fringes of speculation, by forces beyond human understanding. Tales of strange lights in the sky, ancient Inuit legends of otherworldly beings, and eerie local superstitions have all been woven into the story over time, blurring the line between folklore and investigation. Others imagine environmental catastrophes, a sudden and extreme event such as thin ice giving way, or a phenomenon like a meteor strike, disorienting and panicking the villagers beyond reason. Yet no physical evidence, no remains, no debris, has ever been conclusively linked to the disappearance. Still, others have pointed toward more human explanations, a tragic migration gone wrong, perhaps pursued by unseen dangers, with the traces of their flight quickly erased by snow and wind. In the vast, merciless expanses of the Arctic, even a brief miscalculation can mean death, and the landscape itself is capable of erasing all signs of passage in a matter of hours. Today, little remains of the original site. The tundra has reclaimed the ground where the village once stood. The snow covers everything. The old trails, the broken earth, the half-forgotten bones of the sled dogs still buried beneath the drifts. The Anjikuni mystery, whatever its origins, has endured, passed down through whispers, retellings, and speculation. Some call it a cautionary tale, a reminder of nature's indifference and the fragile line between survival and loss. Others see it as a crack in the surface of reality itself, a fleeting glimpse into something stranger, something still waiting in the silent places of the world. What truly happened to the people of the Anjikuni village? Did they vanish into the wilderness, victims of forces too ordinary or too extraordinary for history to record? Or does the frozen wind still carry their story, hidden somewhere beyond the edge of memory? The snow falls, the ice hardens, and the land keeps its secrets, as it always has. In the lush lowlands of southern Costa Rica, where dense rainforests give way to open clearings and the humid air carries the scent of distant rivers, an ancient enigma rests upon the ground. Scattered across fields, buried beneath layers of soil, or tucked quietly along riverbanks, hundreds of massive stone spheres lie in silent repose. Perfectly round, eerily smooth, and strangely deliberate, they seem almost out of place, like relics of a forgotten world. These are the giant stone spheres of the Gigas Delta. The spheres vary in size, from small orbs the size of a human head to massive monoliths weighing up to 15 tons and measuring over 6 feet in diameter. Many are crafted from hard, durable materials, granodiorite, limestone, or sandstone, carefully shaped with remarkable precision. Some are almost perfectly spherical, deviating by no more than a few millimeters from true geometric perfection. Who carved these stones? And why? Archaeological evidence suggests that the spheres were created by the Gigas culture, a pre-Columbian society that flourished in Costa Rica between 700 AD and 1500 AD. Little is known about the Gigas people. They left behind no written language, no monumental inscriptions, and few surviving artifacts beyond their ceramics, their goldwork, and the enduring mystery of the spheres. Most scholars believe the spheres were shaped using a combination of hammerstones and controlled heating techniques, heating the rock and then cooling it rapidly to fracture and smooth the surface. But without direct historical accounts, the full process remains speculative. Even more elusive is the purpose behind the spheres. Some were found carefully arranged in lines, triangles, or geometric patterns, suggesting deliberate placement rather than random scattering. Others were aligned with celestial events, hinting at a possible astronomical function, a prehistoric observatory encoded in stone. Alternatively, the spheres may have served as markers of social status, placed in front of the houses of chiefs or important structures, silent symbols of power and prestige. Yet this theory, too, is based on fragments, the archaeological remains of buildings now long vanished beneath the encroaching jungle. In the absence of definitive answers, more speculative ideas have flourished. Some have suggested that the spheres mark sacred or ceremonial sites, points where the visible and invisible worlds intersected for the Gigas people. Others imagine them as relics of a forgotten mapping system, perhaps representing stars, territories, or mythological stories rendered permanent in stone. And then, beyond the bounds of mainstream theory, lie even more extraordinary interpretations. Fringe thinkers have proposed that the spheres are remnants of an ancient, advanced civilization, perhaps even one lost to history long before the Gigas culture rose to prominence. Legends of Atlantis, of Mu, and of other sunken worlds have been invoked, though no evidence links the spheres to such grand narratives. Others imagine extraterrestrial origins, pointing to the spheres' perfection as signs of intervention by otherworldly forces. While these theories capture the imagination, they remain outside the realm of evidence-based archaeology. Still, their persistence reflects the strange allure of the spheres themselves, objects that seem to defy easy explanation by their very presence. Complicating matters further is the destruction and removal of many spheres over the past century. When the first spheres were rediscovered by banana plantation workers in the 1930s, they were often dynamited in search of rumored treasures hidden inside, treasures that were never found. Others were moved to decorate gardens, town squares, and private estates, severing them from their original context and scattering them across the country and beyond. Today, efforts are being made to preserve and study what remains. The stone spheres of the Gigas have been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognizing their cultural and historical significance. Yet, even with modern technology and careful research, the full story of these ancient artifacts remains stubbornly incomplete. Standing among the spheres today, it is impossible not to feel a sense of wonder. The rainforest presses in around the clearings, the air thick with life, while the stones sit unmoving, as if waiting for a story that has long since been forgotten. Who first conceived of the idea to carve these perfect shapes from raw stone? What meanings, sacred or practical, were they meant to carry? Were they tools of astronomy, monuments of prestige, or symbols of something that only the Gigas people understood? The spheres offer no answers. They endure in silence, bearing the marks of ancient hands, silent witnesses to a civilization whose voice has been lost. In the heart of Costa Rica's forgotten lands, the stone spheres remain, timeless, inscrutable, inviting us to look closer, to wonder, and perhaps, someday, to understand. Deep within the earth, beneath the ancient layers of South Africa's rich mineral beds, strange artifacts have been uncovered. Small, unassuming, yet unlike anything expected to be found buried in rock so old it predates the existence of complex life. They are smooth, rounded, and often grooved, their surfaces whispering of deliberate design. They are known as the Klerksdorp Spheres. Discovered primarily in the pyrophyllite mines near Ottosdal, these curious objects range in size from less than an inch to a few inches across. Some are perfectly spherical, while others are ovoid, shaped like tiny spinning tops. Many are marked by parallel grooves etched so precisely around their circumference that they seem too perfect to be natural. Some spheres are composed of hard hematite, others of softer pyrite or even welded mixtures of minerals. What makes these artifacts so perplexing is the age of the material in which they were found. The rock matrix encasing the spheres has been dated to nearly 3 billion years ago, a time when the Earth was still young, before the first multicellular organisms stirred in the planet's primordial seas. If the spheres were crafted objects, then their presence would suggest an intelligence at work in an era long before any known civilization, long before humanity itself had even emerged. Mainstream geologists offer a grounded explanation. According to most experts, the Klerksdorp Spheres are natural concretions, mineral deposits that slowly formed over millions of years through the gradual accumulation of material around a nucleus. The grooves, they suggest, could result from natural sedimentary layering, erosion, or subtle fracturing during the rock's geological history. In other words, the spheres are remarkable examples of nature's capacity for symmetry and apparent artistry, but not the products of intelligent design. Tests conducted on the spheres support this view. Their internal structures, when sliced open, often reveal radiating mineral patterns consistent with natural formation. No tool marks or signs of artificial shaping have been found under microscopic analysis. And yet, doubts persist. The precision of the grooves, their regularity and even spacing, and the sheer number of such formations concentrated in a specific area have fueled continued speculation. Some observers note that while concretions are not uncommon in geology, the Klerksdorp Spheres seem unusually regular, more precise than what random natural processes typically produce. Beyond the physical characteristics lies the deeper allure of the mystery, the human fascination with the idea that Earth's past might conceal chapters far older and stranger than we have dared to imagine. Speculative theories have flourished. Some suggest the spheres could be remnants of an ancient, lost civilization, perhaps one wiped away by cataclysms so ancient they left no other trace. Others propose even more exotic possibilities, artifacts of extraterrestrial visitors left behind in the deep past and entombed within the forming rock. There are even whispers of alternative timelines, worlds that rose and fell before the familiar history of humanity began. Of course, such theories remain firmly outside the bounds of conventional science. No evidence beyond the spheres themselves points to the existence of ancient technology, lost civilizations, or alien contact 3 billion years ago. And yet, the spheres continue to stir the imagination precisely because they seem to rest at the threshold of what we can explain, the boundary where certainty gives way to wonder. Today, many of the Klerksdorp Spheres are housed in museums and private collections. They are small enough to hold in the palm of a hand, their smooth surfaces cool to the touch. To gaze at them is to feel a quiet, persistent question. How could something so simple carry such weight? Are they mere accidents of geology, beautiful but ultimately meaningless? Or are they silent witnesses to a story too vast, too ancient, and too deeply buried for us to yet comprehend? The mines of Ottosdal continue to yield stone and mineral, but the deepest layers of the earth, like the deepest layers of history, remain largely unexplored. Beneath the pressures of rock and time, secrets wait. not always in the form of lost cities or grand monuments, but sometimes in small, overlooked shapes whose very existence challenges the stories we tell about our world. And so, the Klerksdorp Spheres endure, patient, enigmatic, suspended between the certainties of science and the open horizons of mystery, inviting us, once again, to wonder what else might be hidden just beyond the edges of what we know. In the quiet countryside of central France, where fields roll into misty woods and ancient villages slumber beneath centuries of forgotten stories, there lies a place that once stirred the imaginations of archaeologists and skeptics alike. Near the village of Glozel, hidden beneath a shallow layer of earth, a collection of strange artifacts emerged, relics whose existence would ignite one of the most enduring controversies in the history of archaeology. They are known as the Glozel Tablets. The story began in 1924, when a young farmer named Émile Fradin, while plowing a field, uncovered a curious chamber of stone. Inside were objects unlike anything he had ever seen. Clay tablets inscribed with unfamiliar symbols, along with carved bones, ceramic vessels, and other artifacts. The symbols on the tablets were particularly puzzling, an array of signs that resembled ancient writing, yet matched no known script. News of the discovery spread quickly. Archaeologists, historians, and collectors flocked to the site, eager to see what had been unearthed. Some declared the find a monumental breakthrough, evidence of a lost European civilization, one that had mastered writing and complex craftsmanship long before such achievements were thought possible on the continent. But skepticism soon took root. The artifacts seemed to defy easy classification. Some experts pointed out that the symbols bore superficial similarities to Phoenician, Iberian, or even Proto-Celtic writing systems, yet none matched exactly. Others questioned the context in which the objects were found, arguing that the excavation methods were too crude, that the layering of soil and artifacts appeared disturbed, and that the site might have been tampered with, whether intentionally or not. The controversy deepened when accusations of forgery surfaced. Prominent archaeologists of the time debated fiercely over the authenticity of the Glozel finds. Some accused Émile Fradin himself of fabricating the tablets, despite his consistent protestations of innocence. Tests on the artifacts yielded conflicting results. Some suggested ancient origins, others pointed to more recent manufacture. In 1929, Fradin was even taken to court on charges of fraud, though he was ultimately acquitted. Despite the legal vindication, doubts continued to swirl. Mainstream scholarship largely moved away from Glozel, regarding it with polite skepticism or outright dismissal. The dominant view became that the site was, at best, a mixture of authentic ancient artifacts and more recent intrusions, or, at worst, an elaborate hoax fueled by ambition, local pride, and the human hunger for lost civilizations. And yet, the mystery has never fully settled. Later studies have produced new complexities. Thermoluminescence dating, performed decades after the initial discovery, suggested that some of the clay tablets were genuinely ancient, possibly dating back as far as the Neolithic or early Bronze Age, long before the development of writing systems in Western Europe was believed to have occurred. If those dates are accurate, then what are we to make of the inscriptions? Were they a form of proto-writing, created by a now unknown culture whose existence has been erased by time? Or were the symbols a form of symbolic notation, never intended as formal writing, but carrying meanings now lost to us? The Glozel site itself remains enigmatic. Although additional artifacts have been found in the area, no broader settlement has been uncovered. No city walls, no temples, no clear sign of a thriving civilization. It is as if the Glozel objects are echoes from a world that left almost no trace, a faint imprint on the deep fabric of prehistory. Speculative theories abound. Some propose that Glozel was a ceremonial site, a place of pilgrimage or ritual where offerings were made and preserved in the earth. Others suggest the possibility of a lost migratory culture, leaving behind fragments of language and belief in scattered places now forgotten. A few more fringe theorists even entertain the idea that the Glozel Tablets represent a surviving remnant of an otherwise erased epoch, a distant cousin to the myths of Atlantis and other vanished worlds. But amid all the theories, one truth remains. No consensus has been reached. The Glozel Tablets continue to resist easy classification. Their symbols remain undeciphered. Their origins remain shrouded in a haze of uncertainty, caught somewhere between the rigor of science and the stubborn persistence of legend. Today, visitors to Glozel can still glimpse fragments of the mystery. A small museum houses many of the original artifacts, their surfaces worn and enigmatic, their meanings locked beyond the grasp of modern understanding. The fields where Fraden once plowed lie quiet, touched by the same mists that veil so much of Europe's forgotten past. Were the Glozel Tablets the work of an ancient people, now lost to history? Were they the product of a modern imagination, tangled with the deep longing to discover something more, something older and stranger than the history we know? Or are they something else altogether, a message from a chapter of humanity that remains, for now, unread? The stones remain silent, and the land, as always, keeps its secrets. In the barren cliffs near Qumran, overlooking the lifeless waters of the Dead Sea, a hidden library of ancient scrolls lay undisturbed for nearly 2,000 years. Discovered by chance in the mid-20th century, the Dead Sea Scrolls unveiled a lost world of belief, law, and prophecy. Yet among the fragile parchments and crumbling papyri, one artifact stood apart, harder, heavier, and infinitely more puzzling. It was not made of paper or leather, but of metal. A scroll fashioned from copper, etched with words that hinted not at theology or poetry, but at treasure. This is the Copper Scroll. Found in 1952 inside Cave 3 at Qumran, the Copper Scroll was a revelation unlike anything scholars expected. Rolled and corroded by centuries of decay, it had fused into a solid mass, too brittle to be unrolled by hand. It was eventually cut into strips, carefully separated to reveal the writing hidden inside. The text was unlike any other among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Rather than scripture or commentary, the Copper Scroll reads as a catalog, a list of locations, each said to hold vast quantities of gold, silver, and precious vessels. Line after line, it speaks in terse, matter-of-fact language, detailing hidden caches beneath walls, buried at the junctions of rivers, concealed within tombs, secreted beneath steps, and behind stones. In total, the scroll describes treasures of staggering value, by some estimates, tons of precious metals, hidden across the landscape of ancient Judea. But whose treasure was it? And where is it now? Mainstream scholars offer several theories. One possibility is that the Copper Scroll records the secret hoard of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, hidden away by priests in anticipation of the Roman siege that culminated in the temple's destruction in 70 AD. Others believe it may have belonged to the mysterious sect associated with Qumran itself, the Essenes, who sought to preserve their wealth against the ravages of war and conquest. Yet there are problems with these theories. The places described are often vague, their landmarks referencing locations that have long since vanished or changed beyond recognition. No treasure troves matching the descriptions have ever been definitively found. Moreover, the language of the scroll, its spelling, phrasing, and style, differs markedly from the other Dead Sea Scrolls, suggesting it may have been composed by different hands, perhaps in a different context entirely. And then there is the sheer scale of the wealth described. The quantities of gold and silver, far beyond what a small sect like the Essenes could plausibly possess, hint at something greater, something tied perhaps to the temple itself, or even to older, more obscure traditions of hidden royal treasuries. Over the decades, countless treasure hunters have been drawn to the Copper Scroll's promise. Expeditions have scoured the Judean wilderness, probing ancient ruins, tunnels, and dry riverbeds. Some have claimed to find clues, a broken cistern here, a carved stone there. But no one has uncovered the massive hoards the scroll tantalizingly describes. And so, the mystery endures. Speculative theories have multiplied alongside serious scholarship. Some suggest that the treasure was never intended to be recovered, that the Copper Scroll was a spiritual allegory, a symbolic map of divine rewards hidden in faith and secrecy. Others argue that the treasure was already retrieved long ago, spirited away in the centuries after the fall of Jerusalem, and lost again to history. More fringe ideas propose even more exotic possibilities, that the Copper Scroll was a coded document, its plain language masking hidden meanings accessible only to an initiated few, that it refers to treasures linked to even older civilizations, echoing ancient traditions of secret knowledge and sacred wealth. And amid these theories, a quieter possibility lingers, that the treasures may still lie where the scroll says they were placed, waiting in the deep earth beneath forgotten ruins, their guardians long turned to dust. Today, the Copper Scroll itself is housed in the Jordan Museum in Amman. Its thin, greenish strips bear the scars of time and recovery. The etched letters, though faded, remain stubbornly legible, as if the past still calls out across the ages, challenging anyone bold enough to seek its secrets. Who wrote the Copper Scroll? Was it a desperate act of preservation in a time of chaos? A deliberate attempt to hide sacred wealth from invading armies? Or was it something even stranger, a message whose true meaning has yet to be understood? The arid hills of Qumran, silent and empty beneath the burning sun, offer no answers. The caves gape like open mouths, and the desert winds carry away the voices of those who once knew the truth. And so the Copper Scroll remains, part map, part riddle, inviting us to wonder what riches, literal or symbolic, might still lie buried in the dust of ancient dreams. In the shadowed forests of northeastern Brazil, near the banks of the Paraíba River, an ancient enigma rests under the open sky. Carved into a massive slab of stone, weathered by centuries of rain and sun, are intricate inscriptions, a tapestry of symbols whose meanings remain lost to time. This is the Inga Stone. Measuring over 150 feet long and 13 feet high, the stone's surface is a sprawling canvas of mysterious carvings, spirals, geometric shapes, celestial symbols, and what some interpret as animals or human figures flow across the rock in silent testament to a forgotten story. The grooves are deep and deliberate, etched with a precision that suggests care, purpose, and a message intended to endure. But what was that message? And who left it here, in the heart of a land that holds no other record quite like it? Mainstream archaeologists offer cautious interpretations. The Inga Stone is often classified among Brazil's many prehistoric petroglyphs, believed to have been carved by indigenous peoples long before European contact. It may have served as a sacred site, a ceremonial gathering place, or a form of territorial marker. Some of the motifs, particularly the spirals and serpentine forms, echo patterns seen in other ancient cultures across the Americas, often associated with cosmic cycles, rivers, or spiritual journeys. Yet the Inga Stone stands apart. Unlike many prehistoric carvings, which often depict recognizable scenes of hunting, fertility, or daily life, the symbols at Inga are abstract, almost mathematical in their arrangement. Some seem to align with constellations, suggesting an astronomical function, a primitive star map, perhaps, or a calendar tracking the movements of the heavens. Over the decades, scholars and independent researchers have proposed a wide range of theories. One possibility is that the Inga Stone functioned as a kind of open-air observatory. The Paraíba Valley offers a clear view of the night sky, and the repetition of certain motifs could correspond to lunar phases, solstices, or the positions of significant stars. Some researchers believe that specific carvings align with the Orion constellation, a celestial formation revered in numerous ancient cultures around the world. Others suggest that the stone was a ritual site, where shamanic rites or religious ceremonies were performed, the carvings acting as sacred symbols understood only by initiates. But beyond these grounded explanations lies a space where mystery deepens and speculation takes root. Some have proposed that the inscriptions on the Inga Stone bear a resemblance to ancient scripts, to Phoenician writing, to Greek, to early Semitic languages. Could ancient mariners, long before Columbus and the European age of exploration, have reached the shores of South America and left their mark in stone? While most mainstream historians regard such claims with skepticism, citing the lack of supporting archaeological evidence, the idea persists, fed by the tantalizing possibility that ancient peoples crossed oceans far earlier than previously believed. Even more speculative theories reach further still. Some fringe researchers see in the Inga Stone the remnants of a lost civilization, perhaps even one that predated the known indigenous cultures of the Americas, a society with its own symbolic language, its own understanding of astronomy and mathematics, now vanished except for these fading marks upon the earth. A few have even suggested extraterrestrial influence, imagining the carvings as messages or maps left behind by visitors from beyond, encoded in forms designed to withstand the ravages of time. Of course, no artifacts, no tools, no definitive cultural remains have been found at the Inga site to support such extraordinary claims. The stone stands alone, offering its silent riddles, without the context needed for clear answers. Today, the Inga Stone remains a protected site, though it faces the constant threats of erosion and human encroachment. Scholars continue to study it, measuring, mapping, and attempting to decode its patterns. Visitors walk carefully along its base, tracing the deep grooves with their eyes, feeling the pull of something ancient and unresolved. Standing before the Inga Stone, one cannot help but wonder, was this a place where ancient astronomers charted the paths of the stars, a sacred book carved in stone meant to guide, teach, or warn? Or is it the voice of a culture so distant from us, in time and in understanding, that its meanings have drifted beyond our reach? The forest hums with life, the river moves slowly through the valley, and the carvings endure, lines etched into rock, messages from a past that has not yet yielded all its secrets. The Inga Stone waits, as it has for centuries, and still it invites us to listen. In the quiet halls of the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul, behind layers of careful preservation, rests a fragment of a map that has puzzled scholars and explorers alike for nearly a century. Drawn on gazelle skin, delicate yet durable, its colors faded by time, the chart is adorned with ornate compass roses, mythical creatures, and detailed coastlines. It is known as the Piri Reis Map. Dated to 1513, the map was compiled by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, a man who, by his own account, drew upon a collection of older sources, some lost to history, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. The surviving portion of the map, roughly 1/3 of the original, portrays parts of Western Europe, West Africa, and the eastern coast of South America with impressive accuracy. But it is one particular feature that has captured the world's imagination. A curious depiction of a southern landmass, one that some have interpreted as an early, surprisingly accurate rendering of Antarctica, centuries before the continent's official discovery in 1820. How could such knowledge exist in 1513? Mainstream historians offer cautious explanations. Most scholars believe that the southern coastline depicted on the Piri Reis Map is not Antarctica, but rather a distorted rendering of South America's southeastern shore. The cartographers of the time often extrapolated unknown lands based on rumor, sailors' tales, and imaginative interpretations. Early maps frequently portrayed continents extending farther than they truly did, blending myth and geography into one. Yet, doubts linger. Some studies, particularly those conducted in the mid-20th century, suggested that parts of the coastline on the Piri Reis Map bore uncanny similarities to Antarctica's Queen Maud Land, not as it appears today, buried under miles of ice, but as it might have looked free of ice, based on seismic surveys conducted in modern times. If true, it would imply that whoever created the source material for the Piri Reis Map possessed knowledge far beyond what was believed possible for ancient navigators. Piri Reis himself stated that he based his map on 20 older charts, including some from the time of the ancients, maps that had survived through the centuries only to be compiled, copied, and adapted. Among his sources, he mentioned a map of Christopher Columbus, a document now lost to history, and perhaps even older works from forgotten libraries, like those rumored to have existed in Alexandria. Could fragments of ancient knowledge have persisted through time, passed hand to hand, century after century, carrying glimpses of lands unknown to the mainstream world? Speculative theories have emerged. Some suggest that early civilizations may have possessed seafaring capabilities far greater than once assumed, mapping coastlines long before recorded history. Others go further, proposing that the Piri Reis Map is evidence of a lost civilization, capable of navigating and charting the globe in a distant era, a civilization whose achievements were largely erased by cataclysm or conquest. There are even more fringe ideas. Certain writers have proposed that the map's accuracy hints at extraterrestrial influence, that advanced knowledge was gifted to ancient peoples long before humanity had the tools or technology to gather it themselves. Yet these theories, while captivating, remain outside the consensus of historical scholarship. Careful examination of the map suggests that it blends both remarkable accuracy and understandable errors. Some coastal lines are strikingly correct, others are misshapen or misplaced. It may simply reflect the limits of knowledge at the time, a patchwork quilt of real observations, best guesses, and imaginative interpolations stitched together into a single chart. Still, the question remains: how did Piri Reis, relying on sources already ancient in his day, capture details that align, however imperfectly, with lands barely known or wholly unknown to his contemporaries? Today, the Piri Reis Map endures as a testament to human curiosity, ambition, and the deep mystery of lost knowledge. Its gazelle skin bears the careful hand of a navigator, striving to piece together a world from fragments, myths, and glimpses across the water's edge. Was the southern landmass simply a misinterpretation of South America's tale, or something more, a memory of an earlier Earth glimpsed through the eyes of sailors whose names and nations have been swallowed by time? Standing before the map, tracing its intricate coastlines, its ornate ships riding painted seas, one cannot help but wonder what other stories might lie hidden in the lost libraries of history. Stories waiting still beneath the dust of forgotten ages, whispering of a world we have only begun to rediscover. The Piri Reis Map remains, a fragile artifact of mystery and ambition, inviting us to listen closely to the hints, the echoes, the silent truths woven into its lines. In the scorched plains of southern Iraq, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers once nurtured the earliest blooms of civilization, lies the ancient site of Al-Ubaid. Beneath layers of dust and forgotten time, archaeologists unearthed artifacts that spoke of a world long vanished. Simple tools, pottery, and remains of early structures. But among these relics of early life, something far more unusual emerged: small, carefully crafted figurines, human-like in form, yet distinctly alien in appearance. The Al-Ubaid Lizardmen figurines. Carved from clay and stone, these figurines depict beings with slender bodies, elongated heads, and faces bearing unmistakably reptilian features. Their eyes are large and slanted, their noses mere slits, their mouths thin and inexpressive. Some figures appear to wear helmets or elaborate headdresses. Others seem to cradle infants or adopt poses suggesting authority or ritual significance. They date back to the Ubaid period, around 5000 to 4000 BC, centuries before the flowering of the Sumerian civilization and the first recorded cities of Mesopotamia. Why would the people of Al-Ubaid create such beings? Mainstream archaeologists interpret the figurines cautiously. They may represent deities or spiritual figures, embodying the forces of nature that early agricultural societies so depended upon. The reptilian features could symbolize fertility, transformation, or water, vital elements in the harsh climate of southern Mesopotamia. In ancient cultures, animals often held symbolic significance, their forms merging with human traits in the art of myth and ritual. It is possible that these lizard-like beings were the representations of gods, powerful entities associated with creation, survival, or the mystery of life itself. Yet even within these explanations, questions linger. Unlike other anthropomorphic deities of the region, whose forms blended human and animal traits in more recognizable ways, lions, bulls, birds, the Al-Ubaid figurines present a distinctly alien aesthetic, one that feels curiously out of step with later traditions. Their posture, dress, and the attention given to their reptilian features suggest that they were not merely stylized humans, but something altogether different. And so, more speculative theories have taken root. Some propose that the figurines are depictions of beings from beyond, visitors from another world, recorded in clay by a people who saw them not as myth, but as reality. Could ancient Mesopotamia, cradle of human civilization, have witnessed contact with intelligences not of this earth? Was the reptilian form more than symbolism, but rather a direct observation? Others suggest a more terrestrial, though no less mysterious, origin. Could the Al-Ubaid figurines represent memories of a forgotten epoch, a remnant of a time before recorded history, when now extinct humanoid species, perhaps with features unlike our own, walked the early Earth alongside the ancestors of modern humanity? Is it possible that ancient oral traditions, long lost to time, preserved images of beings that history has otherwise erased? Skeptics, of course, urge caution. There is no archaeological evidence of advanced civilizations predating the Ubaid culture. No records, no tools, no structures suggestive of external influence. The figurines, like countless other ancient artifacts, may simply reflect symbolic or artistic traditions whose meanings are forever beyond our reach. Yet the mystery persists. The reptilian features of the Al-Ubaid figurines stand starkly apart from the naturalistic human forms found elsewhere in the region's ancient art. Their careful craftsmanship, their consistent iconography, and their appearance in the earliest settlements of a culture that would give rise to the great cities of Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon, continue to inspire curiosity. Today, these figurines rest in museum displays, their surfaces cracked and worn, their enigmatic faces gazing across millennia of human history. Visitors peer at them through glass cases, caught between rational explanations and the quiet, persistent sense that some mysteries refuse to yield their secrets so easily. Were the Al-Ubaid lizardmen merely the products of ancient imagination, symbols woven into the myths of a people striving to make sense of a harsh and unpredictable world? Or are they echoes of something stranger, a story left unrecorded except in the silent testimony of clay and stone? The desert winds still sweep across the ruins of Al-Ubaid, carrying whispers from a time before time, whispers we can barely hear, let alone understand. And the figurines remain, patient and silent, inviting us to wonder what else may be hidden in the deep shadows of our forgotten past. Beneath the rolling hills and quiet meadows of Central Europe, in Germany, Austria, Scotland, and beyond, an ancient secret lies hidden in the earth. Narrow, dark, and often barely wide enough to crawl through, a network of mysterious tunnels winds through the subterranean world, untouched by sunlight for centuries. They are known as the Erdstall Tunnels. First documented in medieval chronicles, but likely far older, these tunnels are a puzzle wrapped in silence. They are typically found in rural regions, often near ancient settlements or old churches. Low, cramped, and winding without clear direction, the passageways stretch for dozens, sometimes hundreds of feet. Some end in tiny chambers no larger than a crouched human. Others seem to vanish abruptly into collapsed earth. The tunnels are smooth, carved carefully from bedrock, often showing a uniformity of shape and construction. Narrow passages just large enough for a person to pass through, connected by small, slip knot holes, tight openings requiring an individual to squeeze from one section to the next. But why were they built? Mainstream archaeology offers several possibilities. Some scholars suggest that the Erdstall tunnels served as hiding places, refuge during times of war or invasion when survival depended on secrecy and speed. Others argue that they might have been storage spaces, cellars for food, or conduits for drainage and air ventilation. And yet, none of these explanations seem to fully satisfy. The tunnels are remarkably impractical for long-term shelter. They lack air shafts, water sources, or even sufficient space to accommodate many people for any length of time. Their cramped dimensions and disorienting layouts would have made them poor choices for storage or transport. Nor do they connect logically to nearby fortifications or settlements. They begin and end abruptly, without evident purpose. Adding to the enigma, most Erdstall tunnels lack any datable artifacts. There are no tools, no pottery shards, no remains to anchor them to a particular culture or century. While carbon dating of surrounding materials offers estimates, the true age of the tunnels remains elusive. In the absence of clear answers, speculation begins to bloom. Some researchers propose that the tunnels had a ritualistic or symbolic purpose, that they were never intended for practical use, but instead played a role in ancient rites of passage, representing a symbolic journey through darkness and rebirth. The act of crawling through the earth, passing through the tight slip knot holes, may have mirrored spiritual or mythological beliefs tied to death, transformation, or the underworld. Others suggest that the tunnels were protective in another sense, not from physical enemies, but from supernatural ones. In the folklore of Europe, tales abound of subterranean beings, spirits, and otherworldly forces. Could the Erdstall tunnels have been created as places of retreat, not just from earthly threats, but from dangers believed to lurk beyond the human world? And then, further into the realm of speculation, lie even stranger ideas. Some theorists wonder if the tunnels are remnants of an earlier, forgotten epoch, a civilization or tradition that left few other traces, now remembered only in the earth itself. Others imagine a more practical, but still remarkable, origin. A vast network once meant to connect communities across great distances, before shifting landscapes and forgotten disasters broke the web apart. No single explanation accounts for all the tunnels. They appear across vast regions, sometimes isolated, sometimes clustered. They vary subtly in construction techniques, yet share a fundamental similarity that hints at a common knowledge or shared tradition now long erased. Today, many Erdstall tunnels remain inaccessible, too narrow, collapsed, or sealed for safety. Others have been carefully excavated, revealing their labyrinthine twists and turns to modern eyes. Yet even when fully mapped, their purpose eludes discovery. Walking through them, crouched low, feeling the cool breath of ancient air against the skin, the modern visitor cannot help but sense the weight of unseen history pressing from the walls. Why would a people, facing the challenges of survival in a harsh and uncertain world, devote so much effort to carving such strange, impractical spaces into the earth? What drove them into darkness, leaving behind no explanation, no clear record, only these silent, empty corridors? The grass grows thick above the hills, birds sing in the forests, villages rise and fall, and beneath it all, the Erdstall Tunnels wait, as they have for centuries, untouched, unexplained, enduring. Perhaps someday another clue will surface, a forgotten manuscript, an overlooked artifact, a discovery hidden just beyond the next bend in a collapsed passage. Until then, the Erdstall Tunnels remain one of Europe's most haunting enigmas, silent reminders of how much of the past still sleeps just beneath our feet. Along the banks of the Danube River, where the mist often hangs low over the water and the ancient soil is rich with the layers of forgotten ages, archaeologists have unearthed the remnants of one of Europe's earliest known civilizations. Amid fragments of pottery, figurines, and tools, they found something that has stirred quiet, persistent wonder. A series of small, enigmatic markings, carefully etched into clay. They are known as the Vinča Symbols. Dating back to between 5,500 and 4,000 BC, the Vinča culture thrived across the region of what is now Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, and parts of the Balkans. Long before the rise of Sumer, Egypt, or the Indus Valley, the people of Vinča built settlements, crafted sophisticated ceramics, and engaged in widespread trade. They left behind houses organized in neat rows, evidence of metallurgy, and artifacts of striking craftsmanship. But among these achievements, it is the symbols, delicate, deliberate, and undeniably patterned, that whisper most insistently across the millennia. The symbols are found primarily on pottery shards, figurines, and plaques. They include simple geometric shapes, crosses, chevrons, spirals, as well as more abstract forms that seem to hint at a structured system. Some resemble plants or celestial objects. Others evoke the idea of animals or stylized human forms. The mystery lies in their purpose. Were the Vinča symbols a form of writing, perhaps the earliest known to humanity? Or were they simply decorative motifs, imbued with ritual or symbolic meaning, but never intended to record language? Mainstream scholars remain cautious. The prevailing view holds that the Vinča symbols likely represent proto-writing, a transitional stage between symbolic representation and full linguistic writing systems. In this view, they may have been used to convey ownership, identity, or ritual significance, much like early symbolic markings found elsewhere in the ancient world. Yet, the sheer consistency and repetition of certain symbols, along with their widespread use across different sites, suggest a complexity that cannot be easily dismissed. The symbols seem more organized than random, more structured than simple decoration. Some researchers have pointed to similarities between the Vinča signs and later writing systems, from Sumerian cuneiform to the early scripts of Crete and Anatolia. Could it be that the seeds of writing, the ability to encode and transmit abstract thought across generations, first took root not in the Fertile Crescent, but along the rivers and forests of prehistoric Europe? Speculative theories, inevitably, have grown alongside the academic debates. Some have proposed that the Vinča civilization was part of a much broader, now forgotten network of early cultures, a network that shared knowledge, symbols, and perhaps even a common language long before history's first recorded empires. In this view, the Vinča people were not isolated, but part of an ancient world far more connected and far more complex than we have yet fully understood. Others reach further still. A few fringe theorists have suggested that the Vinča symbols record knowledge of an advanced prehistoric society, one whose scientific understanding of the cosmos, agriculture, and human society far exceeded what conventional timelines allow. They see in the spirals, crosses, and geometric patterns the echoes of celestial charts, agricultural calendars, and spiritual doctrines, forgotten after a catastrophic collapse. Yet no definitive key to the symbols has ever been found. No Rosetta Stone ties them to a known language. No bilingual inscriptions decode their meanings. The artifacts themselves offer only tantalizing glimpses. A few symbols repeated on pottery, meant for daily use. A handful of plaques bearing sequences that seem almost like sentences frozen in clay. As with many ancient mysteries, the passage of time has left more questions than answers. Were the Vinča symbols a private language of the elite? A sacred script accessible only to priests or shamans? A set of marks meant not to be read in the modern sense, but to be felt and understood within a worldview radically different from our own? Or are we imposing too much meaning upon patterns born of artistic instinct and communal tradition, seeing language where none yet existed? Today, the artifacts bearing the Vinča symbols are housed in museums across Eastern Europe. Behind glass, under the soft glow of display lights, the faded lines still speak, though their language remains unknown. They are marks of hands long vanished, hands that pressed damp clay, shaped it into vessels and figures, and then inscribed upon it thoughts we can no longer hear. Standing before them, the distance between now and then seems to dissolve. The question rises, as it always does when facing the silent witnesses of the ancient world. What were they trying to say? And how much of that lost conversation might still linger, just waiting for us to understand? The river continues to flow past the old settlement sites, its waters carrying away the dust of countless forgotten years. But beneath the fields, in the broken pots and buried stones, the Vinča symbols remain, quiet, enduring, and still unknown. In the remote wilderness of New Zealand's South Island, where mist coils through ancient beech forests and sheer limestone cliffs rise sharply from the earth, there lies a place untouched by time. Beneath the rugged slopes of Mount Owen, deep within a labyrinth of caves, an extraordinary discovery awaited. Silent, perfectly preserved, hidden from the eyes of the world for centuries. It was a claw, massive, gnarled, and still sheathed in mummified skin and muscle, as if its owner had only recently fallen. In 1986, a team of speleologists exploring the dark, twisting caverns of Mount Owen stumbled upon the claw buried beneath layers of sediment. At first glance, it appeared eerily fresh, its leathery hide intact, its talons sharp, despite the passage of countless years. It seemed less a fossil than the remnant of a creature that might yet lurk in the shadowed reaches of the cave. Careful analysis revealed the truth. The claw belonged to a moa, a giant, flightless bird that once roamed New Zealand's dense forests and open plains. Some species of moa stood up to 12 feet tall and weighed over 500 pounds, towering above early Polynesian settlers. The moa were part of a lost world, hunted to extinction around the 15th century, victims of human predation and ecological upheaval. But the Mount Owen claw raised unsettling questions. How had it remained so perfectly preserved? Could a creature so seemingly recent have survived longer than the official histories suggest? Mainstream science offers explanations rooted in the cave's unique environment. The stable temperature, constant humidity, and isolation from predators and scavengers created conditions ideal for preservation. In such a setting, organic material could resist decay for centuries, even millennia, locking flesh and bone in a state of suspended animation. radiocarbon dating confirmed that the claw was indeed ancient, thousands of years old, far predating European exploration of New Zealand. It was a relic of a time when moa still wandered the dense forests, their heavy footfalls lost in the mists of prehistory. Yet, even with these facts laid bare, the Mount Owen claw stirs deeper speculation. Could isolated populations of moa have survived longer than we believe, hidden away in remote corners of New Zealand, beyond the reach of human hunters and explorers? After all, the country's rugged landscapes hold vast stretches of unexplored wilderness, dense with vegetation and marked by treacherous terrain. Could the legends of the Maori people, tales of giant birds, mysterious creatures stalking the forests, be echoes of memories not as distant as we assume? Some cryptozoologists have suggested that sightings of large, strange birds reported even into the modern era could hint at relict moa populations, surviving in secret far beyond their supposed extinction. Though mainstream zoology regards such claims with deep skepticism, the idea persists, fueled by the stark, undeniable reality of the Mount Owen claw, a reminder that nature often keeps its secrets better than we expect. And even if the moa themselves are truly gone, their story, and the claw left behind, invite a broader question. How much of the Earth's deep history remains hidden, buried in forgotten caves, sealed beneath ancient forests, waiting for the light of human curiosity to uncover it? The Mount Owen discovery is not alone. Around the world, caves, bogs, and ice fields have yielded preserved relics of species long thought lost. A single bone here, a fragment of hide there, clues that challenge our understanding of extinction, survival, and the fragile line between the past and the present. Today, the Mount Owen claw rests preserved in a museum collection, its leathery form frozen in time, a silent witness to a vanished world. Visitors who see it often feel a jolt of unease, as though peering not into the distant past, but into a living memory, the ghost of a creature that once strode these lands with strength and certainty, unaware that its days were numbered. Was the Mount Owen claw merely an extraordinary relic, preserved by chance and circumstance? Or was it a whisper from a lost age, a hint that some stories are not yet fully written? The caves of Mount Owen remain dark, silent, and largely unexplored, their secrets locked away in stone and silence. And perhaps, somewhere in the hidden hollows of the earth, the echoes of the moa, or something even stranger, still linger. In the sun-scorched expanse of Chile's Atacama Desert, one of the driest, most desolate places on Earth, the sands conceal ancient secrets beneath their cracked and lifeless surface. It was here, in 2003, near the abandoned town of La Noria, that a strange and unsettling discovery emerged from the dust. A tiny, perfectly formed skeleton, unlike anything seen before. The world would come to know it as the Atacama humanoid, or simply, Atta. Barely 6 inches long, the skeletal figure possessed features both familiar and deeply alien. The skull was elongated and conical, with a pronounced ridge atop its head. Its eye sockets appeared larger than normal, while the body, despite its diminutive size, bore signs of advanced bone development more typical of a small child than a fetus. The proportions were bizarre: long limbs, a tiny torso, and an eerily human-like structure, yet wrong in ways that defied easy classification. What was Atta? A human? A hoax? Something else altogether? Initial examinations yielded no simple answers. The skeleton showed signs of having lived, perhaps for 6 to 8 years, an unsettling suggestion given its minuscule size. Its teeth were fully developed, and the bones showed an advanced stage of growth. Some experts proposed that it might be the remains of a prematurely born child or a fetus with severe developmental disorders, yet no known condition could fully explain the extreme anomalies. As images of Atta spread across the world, so too did theories. Some believed it to be a case of extreme dwarfism or a rare congenital disease unknown to modern medicine. Others, pointing to the striking skull shape and unusual structure, speculated about ancient genetic experiments, secret research projects, or even extraterrestrial origins. The idea of an alien, a being not of this world, captured the public imagination. The Atacama Desert, after all, has long been associated with mysterious lights in the sky, unexplained phenomena, and ancient, enigmatic cultures. Could Atta have been something more than human? A relic of a forgotten encounter? In 2018, a team of scientists published a groundbreaking study after conducting a full genomic analysis of Atta's remains. The findings were sobering. Atta was, in fact, human, a female of indigenous Chilean ancestry. Her DNA showed mutations in several genes related to bone development and growth, mutations that likely resulted in the skeletal anomalies observed. The condition was complex and previously undocumented, suggesting a tragic but very earthly origin. And yet, even in the face of scientific explanation, the mystery has not entirely faded. The questions now shift from the fantastical to the poignant. Who was Atta? Was she abandoned in the harsh desert, her body left to the sands by a grieving community that did not understand her condition? Or did she live, even briefly, among a people whose customs and practices have been lost to time, in a settlement long since reclaimed by the desert? And then, there are deeper, more haunting considerations. How many other genetic variations, rare conditions, and human anomalies have passed unnoticed, unrecorded, erased by history's indifference? Atta's discovery reminds us of how little we truly know about the millions of lives that preceded our own, and how the boundary between the known and the unknown is often as thin as the layer of dust that covered her for decades. Standing before the tiny figure, the feeling is unmistakable, a mix of sadness, awe, and wonder. Atta is no longer a being of pure mystery, yet she continues to challenge our understanding, not just of biology, but of the very narratives we weave around the strange and unexplained. She is a testament to the complexity of life, to the persistence of mystery even in the face of science, and to the enduring human need to seek meaning in the unknown. In the endless silence of the Atacama Desert, where the stars burn cold and bright above the empty sands, Atta's story remains, a fragile, unspoken question carved into bone and memory. How many other secrets still lie hidden beneath the Earth's most desolate places? How many stories, like Atta's, are waiting to be uncovered? Stories that, even when explained, continue to whisper of the mysteries we have only just begun to understand. In the desert lands of Egypt, where the shifting sands conceal the remnants of untold empires, ancient whispers speak of a structure so vast, so complex, that it dwarfed all known monuments of its time. Near the shores of the once mighty Lake Meris, beyond the pyramids and temples familiar to modern travelers, there was said to be a colossal labyrinth, a marvel of architecture, mystery, and forgotten ambition. It is known today as the Lost Labyrinth of Egypt. Our earliest accounts of this enigmatic structure come from ancient historians who claim to have seen it with their own eyes. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BC, described it in awe, saying that it surpassed even the pyramids in grandeur. He spoke of a building composed of 12 vast courts, roofed and connected by a bewildering array of chambers, corridors, and halls, all adorned with intricate carvings and reliefs. According to him, the labyrinth contained 3,000 rooms, half above ground, half subterranean, stretching across a vast expanse. Later writers, including Strabo and Pliny the Elder, echoed these tales. They painted vivid images of a bewildering architectural masterpiece, so immense and complex that none who entered could find their way without a guide. Yet despite these detailed descriptions, no definitive trace of the labyrinth has ever been found. What happened to this monumental structure? Did it ever truly exist, or is it a relic of exaggerated memory, a myth woven from the ruins of lesser buildings? Mainstream archaeology suggests that the labyrinth once stood near the modern site of Hawara in the Fayum Oasis. In the 19th century, famed Egyptologist Flinders Petrie excavated parts of Hawara and discovered the ruins of a massive mortuary temple built by Pharaoh Amenemhat III during the 12th dynasty, around 1800 BC. Petrie found evidence of immense walls and a complex ground plan, but he concluded that the site had been heavily dismantled in antiquity, its stones repurposed for later constructions. The remaining foundations hinted at the scale described by ancient writers, yet the true grandeur, the sprawling corridors, the hidden subterranean chambers, remained elusive. Some scholars argue that time, natural erosion, and human intervention destroyed the labyrinth, scattering its stones and leaving only shadows in the sand. Yet, tantalizing hints suggest that more may lie buried. In the early 2000s, a team using ground-penetrating radar detected vast anomalies beneath the surface at Hawara, rectangular patterns and deep cavities inconsistent with natural geology. Could these be the long-lost halls of the labyrinth, still hidden beneath layers of earth and debris? If so, why has no full excavation been launched? Political instability, funding challenges, and the complexities of working in Egypt's delicate archaeological zones have all been cited. But for now, the ground remains undisturbed, the secrets of the labyrinth still locked beneath centuries of silence. Speculative theories abound. Some suggest that the labyrinth was more than a mortuary temple, that it served as a library of immense knowledge, a repository of sacred texts and ancient wisdom later lost to the world. Herodotus himself mentioned the underground chambers were said to house the tombs of kings and sacred crocodiles, linking the labyrinth to the religious and funerary practices of Egypt's mysterious Middle Kingdom. Others go further still, proposing that the labyrinth hid records of a pre-dynastic civilization, now forgotten, or even connections to older global traditions of lost knowledge, echoes of Atlantis, Mu, or other ancient myths. More cautious voices urge skepticism, pointing out that ancient travelers were often prone to embellishment, and that the ruins of Hawara, though impressive, may never have matched the towering legends recounted by later generations. Yet, the mystery endures. Why would so many ancient sources, independent of one another, describe the labyrinth with such vivid reverence if it were merely a minor structure? What truths lie at the heart of their accounts? And how much have we lost to the grinding passage of time, erosion, and the scavenging hands of history? Today, the desert winds sweep across the Fayum Basin, carrying the scent of distant waters and the sigh of forgotten stone. Visitors who come to Hawara find little more than scattered ruins, unassuming remnants of what might once have been one of humanity's greatest architectural achievements. But beneath the dust, beneath the cracked earth and the sunlit silence, something may still slumber. Was the lost labyrinth of Egypt a grand funerary complex, a sanctuary of sacred rites, a hidden library of ancient wisdom, or a vision exaggerated by awe and memory? The stones do not speak, the sands do not part. And so the lost labyrinth remains, a whisper from deep antiquity, a riddle half-remembered, still waiting to reveal what secrets may lie buried in the shifting soil of history.